Chapter 165. The drizzle lingered in the long night, drifting all over Changdao. In the early morning, when the sky was just brightening, Li Tianlan and Jiang Shanyu walked into a fisherman's noodle restaurant on the side of the street in the drizzle that had lasted for nearly a week. It was almost July, and the weather was getting hotter and hotter. However, Changdao was near the sea, so the temperature difference between day and night was slightly big. Moreover, it was a rainy morning, so the whole air was cool. The two walked into the small but extremely clean noodle restaurant in silence. After ordering 2 bowls of fish ball noodles, they quietly waited for breakfast to be served. Li Tianlan sat by the window, looking at the drizzle hitting the ground with a calm face. It had been nearly a week since he got rid of my Shiranui's pursuit, and he was still with Jiang Shanyu. It wasn't that he wanted him to stay, but Jiang Shanyu seemed to not want to leave at all. Under such circumstances, Li Tianlan naturally couldn't drive him away. In the face of a person who was obviously malicious or even murderous to him, he didn't care about manners. But Jiang Shanyu's murderous intent was looming, and it seemed that he still wanted to kill him. Li Tianlan knew very well that if he acted too vigilant and hurried to keep a distance from him, it would stimulate Jiang Shanyu's subtle psychology at this time, and he might even regard what he did as a sign of his guilty conscience. For such a person who was obviously powerful but was willing to be inferior to the heavenly sun for many years, he might hesitate to do something before he was sure. But once he made up his mind, nothing could stop him from moving forward. Once he decided to kill him, it would be a fight to the death. With Li Tianlan's current strength, he wouldn't be afraid of anyone. Jiang Shanyu might hesitate, but he knew very well that what he said a few days ago was true. If he fought with Jiang Shanyu would die, but he would certainly pay a great price. In such a battle, even if he could survive, he was afraid that he couldn't escape my Shiranui's pursuit. In Li Tianlan's view, it was completely stupid to fight with the so-called own people in a foreign country. It would be best if both sides could restrain their emotions. So on the premise that they both wanted to kill each other, they quietly joined forces and took action at the same time. In nearly a week, nearly 10 famous figures in Changdao were all assassinated. There was a thundershocking realm expert, 3 fire-flaming realm experts, a bank manager, 2 senior officials, a scholar, a gang leader, and a patriarch of a wealthy family in East Island. At this point, the hunting list in Li Tianlan's hand was nearly half complete. After Li Tianlan, Wang Xingxiao, and Gu Hanzhan, the 3 heavenly sons of Zhongzhou State, left Dongdu, Jiang Shanyu, who also got part of the second hunting list, also wiped out all his targets in Changdao. Both sides seemed to slowly realize the benefits of joint action. Given their age and strength, it was hard to find many equal opponents in the whole dark world. When 2 young men in the fire-flaming realm who had the strength to kill a thunder-shocking realm expert alone joined forces, they could almost wipe out all the people on the list. He drove straight in and swaggered off. He was swift and decisive, overbearing to the point of being unreasonable. Even the only thunder-shocking realm expert on the hunting list in this area of Changdao was killed in less than 3 minutes under the joint attack of Li Tianlan and Jiang Shanyu. The whole Changdao was in a state of panic. In less than a week, there were 10 battles. Jiang Shanyu would fight in every battle, but he never used his full strength. When he hit his strength and was willing to assist, Li Tianlan could kill very comfortably in any battle. And what made him feel more comfortable was Jiang Shanyu's camouflage skills. Camouflage and lurking. This was Li Tianlan's shortcoming. In the Sky Academy, he had not even taken this course, which was taught by the enchantress. His strength could definitely make him look down on his peers, but in terms of camouflage and lurking, almost all his peers could beat him. This was almost one of the main reasons why my Shiranui could chase him from Ninghu to Changdao. Jiang Shanyu was an expert in this aspect. He was a master. Before and after each battle, the 2 of them would change their appearances and wander around every corner of the city like ghosts. The continuous murders often gave the police in Changdao a splitting headache, but no one could track the whereabouts of Li Tianlan and Jiang Shanyu. The 2 of them changed places almost every day. After the initial hustle and bustle, the police in Changdao seemed to be a little numb and lifeless. To be exact, the whole Changdao, the first city in the world to be bombed and rebuilt by nuclear weapons, was a little lifeless. The police were silent. Even my Shiranui seemed to be quiet after the failure that night. She seemed to have understood that she could not be a match for Li Tianlan and Jiang Shangyu. Recently, it seemed that even the power to search for the two was less. While waiting for breakfast, the two sat face to face, looking at the rain outside the window, thinking quietly. "Do you want to try again?" Jiang Shangyu suddenly said in a soft tone. This young man, who didn't have the title of the Heavenly Son and didn't have the inheritance of the invincible realm, but he was likely to have the potential and even strength of the Heavenly Son, was very gentle when he smiled. After getting along with him for a few days, Li Tianlan had to admit that he was a wonderful person who couldn't make people feel bad even though he knew he was up to no good. He looked at Li Tianlan and smiled sincerely. "If you want, I'm willing to accompany you to the end." "Forget it." Li Tianlan shook his head. "It doesn't make sense." In the days when the whole East Island was lifeless, Li Tianlan didn't feel safe. Instead, as each day passed, he felt more and more nervous, as if he was surrounded by danger. That was his almost innate intuition, which kept reminding him to leave this seemingly safe place as soon as possible. Changdao was lifeless and calm. But in Li Tianlan's view, the whole Changdao seemed to have become a cage. A tightly guarded cage. For 3 days in a row, after getting rid of my Shiranui and killing all the people on the hunting list, he and Jiang Shangyu had been trying to leave Changdao. For 3 days, the two of them tried to leave the territory from different directions and meet up with the high-end combat power led by Tribulation. They tried 6 times in a row, but they failed every time. Highways, barren hills, jungles, docks. Tight dragnet. East Island seemed to have quietly surrounded the whole Changdao. Under the strict defense, the two of them suddenly found that they seemed to have been trapped in this city unconsciously. It was almost impossible to sneak out. Killing their way out was the only way. Killing their way out. It was a good idea. But it was also an untimely idea. Although Li Tianlan's current state did not affect his normal fighting, his injury was extremely serious. In his estimation, it would take at least 10 days for him to barely exert his peak strength. At that time, he would join forces with Jiang Shangyu to break out of the encirclement. That would be the best time. But everything was just as he had said. It didn't make sense. During the time when Changdao was locked up by the East Island officials, the whole territory of East Island had been in turmoil. Starting from Dongdu, Ninghu, Juban, Jingzhong, Minjia, Wakayama, the whole East Island was in a killing frenzy like the end of the world. Every day in the media reports, the casualty rate of the important figures in East Island was rising. In the dark, there seemed to be a mysterious force appearing everywhere in East Island, sweeping the whole territory with a momentum that could sweep everything. And from the current situation, this force was most likely to converge in Changdao. Tribulation naturally didn't do it on purpose. Li Tianlan had got in touch with Bai Yuming and finally confirmed a piece of news. East Island seemed to be driving them away on purpose. In the scheme of Zhongzhou State, the first batch of elites sneaked into East Island was about 2,000 people. Including the chess pieces of Zhongzhou State lurking in East Island, there were about 2,500 people in total. And in the past week, East Island was completely crazy. It was not convenient for the officials to directly send out the army to encircle and annihilate them, but countless military superiors had quietly joined the pursuit camp. In a week, more than 400 elites of Zhongzhou State were buried in East Island. Nearly 1,000 people had been driven into Changdao by East Island's constant pursuit. At this point, the whole Zhongzhou State had no way back. Whether they were willing or not, in such a situation, everyone in Zhongzhou State had to gather in Changdao and then discuss the next battle plan, or to deal with the all-out counterattack of East Island that might come at any time. 6 days ago, the battle between the Master of Samsara Palace and the God of War of Zhongzhou State ended with the victory of the Master of Samsara Palace. The news spread all over the dark world. Along with this news, there was another more shocking news. Tianhai Wuji, the Wuji sword master of East Island, and Luxing Xianxia, the Jifeng sword sage of East Island, teamed up to ask Wang Tianzong, the Sword Emperor of Zhongzhou State, for advice on swordsmanship, but they were completely defeated. The two great grandmasters of East Island were sincerely convinced. They had decided to stay in Zhongzhou State temporarily and ask Wang Tianzong, the Sword Emperor of Zhongzhou State, for advice on swordsmanship. Both of them were traveling in Zhongzhou State together. Huan Kong, the Lord of Fantasy World, and Chaos, the commander of Knights Templars, regretted not meeting the master of Samsara Palace earlier. Jiang Qiannian, the second master of the Jiang family of South America, was assisting in the investigation because he was involved in a secret case about the killing of a high-level official of Kunlun City. This was the official statement of Zhongzhou State. Humbly asking for advice, regretting not meeting earlier, drinking and chatting, not to mention how ridiculous this news was, it was an indisputable fact that the 5 Invincible Realm experts who went to Zhongzhou State to watch the ceremony all lost contact in Zhongzhou State. And the fight in the Dark World, without official preparation, couldn't even be protested through diplomatic channels. Such official preparation also needed time and reasons. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Zhongzhou State had been famous for its eloquence since the founding of the country. When the other side found a reason to protest, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs would respond, and then protest again, and then respond again. For Zhongzhou State, which had the initiative, this war of words could be played in any way it wanted. It was enough to play until the end of the East Island incident. At present, it was unknown what Knights Templars and the fantasy world would do. But the two great grandmasters of Invincible Realm were left in Zhongzhou State, and a large number of elites of Zhongzhou State went to East Island. The whole East Island had no choice. The final battle was imperative. Two great grandmasters of East Island, and countless elites and experts of the special warfare system of East Island lurking in Zhongzhou State. The more this kind of power was controlled by Zhongzhou State, the more chips Zhongzhou State had. As time went by, batch after batch of elites of Zhongzhou State entered East Island, and the whole East Island didn't even have the power to fight back in the end. So, the final battle. Only by catching all the elites of Zhongzhou State who sneaked into East Island in the final battle and controlling the chips to talk with Zhongzhou State, East Island had the possibility to save the situation. Zhongzhou State had the power of the whole country. So did East Island now. And on its own home ground, East Island moved much faster than Zhongzhou State. In just a few days, it could be said that East Island had used all its power to investigate all the people lurking in Zhongzhou State crazily. They hunted them all the way. If they couldn't kill them, they drove them away. Changdao. Obviously, it was the place that East Island had chosen for the final battle. In decades, the biggest conflict between Zhongzhou State and East Island in the Dark World would completely break out and come to an end here. Whether this national plot could succeed or not, the Battle of Changdao would be the most crucial point. Now the prelude had been drawn, and they only needed to wait for the result. Should I find a chance to play? In the silence, Li Tianlan suddenly opened his mouth again, as if he was mumbling to himself, or asking Jiang Shangyu. Jiang Shangyu's eyes suddenly lit up, and he was about to speak. Outside the noodle house, the figure of a young man had already quietly walked in. This was a man in shabby clothes. He couldn't tell his age, and he couldn't even see his face clearly. He wore a faded top hat, a thin and dirty windbreaker, and carried a black travel bag. He slowly sat in another corner of the noodle house. In Jiang Shangyu's sight, he could only see his side face and the old red scarf around his neck that violated the current weather. In an instant, Jiang Shangyu's pupils suddenly shrank. What's wrong? Li Tianlan, who turned his head out of the window, glanced at Jiang Shangyu and asked casually. Jiang Shangyu had already lowered his head and lit a cigarette. When he raised his head again, his expression had completely returned to normal. Nothing. He took a deep drag on the cigarette and said with a smile. Indeed nothing. Anyway, it was none of his business. It was Li Tianlan who was in trouble. At this moment, Jiang Shangyu could be sure that Li Tianlan was in trouble. And deadly trouble. Chapter 166. After eating a bowl of steaming fish ball noodles, Li Tianlan and Jiang Shangyu went straight back to the nearby hotel. The hotel with no stars was more like a small hotel on the side of the road. It was not shabby, but very simple. The two of them booked 2 rooms and lived in seclusion and safety. Jiang Shangyu's appearance made Li Tianlan vigilant, but he had to admit that his appearance did make up for his shortcomings. It was not the shortcoming of combat power, but the insufficiency of disguise. At least Jiang Shangyu could speak Japanese fluently, which was something that Li Tianlan could not catch up with in a short time. Now Jiang Shangyu and he disguised as a pair of brothers with a similar age difference. The elder brother was more talkative, while the younger brother was mute. This disguise was not necessarily flawless, but on the one hand, their disguise time was very short. On the other hand, according to the principle of changing places every 2 or 3 days, in a short time, they did not need to worry about being exposed. The two of them walked into the lobby of the hotel one after the other. The young Japanese woman who was working at the front desk looked up at them, blushed, and greeted them in soft Japanese with a coquettish voice. Li Tianlan looked at Jiang Shangyu expressionlessly. Then he turned and walked into the elevator without saying a word. Jiang Shangyu, who looked delicate and clean, gave people a gentle but firm feeling, walked into the front desk with a smile and stood in front of the woman whose legs seemed to be a little weak. Turning the corner, Li Tianlan casually looked back. Jiang Shangyu had already put his hand into the front desk girl's overalls with a smile. The girl's face, which was not very beautiful but delicate and quiet, was a little flushed. Her charming eyes were like silk, but she looked around in panic. But her body bent slightly, whether intentionally or unintentionally, to cooperate with Jiang Shangyu's play. The two of them looked at each other. In an instant of embarrassment, Li Tianlan's figure had already walked into the elevator. It was still difficult for him to adapt to the rich and colorful life in the dark world. For nearly a week, his life was like an ascetic, meditating, eating, sleeping, and rushing. However, Jiang Shangyu's life was really colorful. In less than 3 days in this hotel, 3 women, including the landlady, who were somewhat attractive in some aspects, had entered Jiang Shangyu's room one after another. The so-called having fun every night was just like that. The girl at the front desk downstairs had screamed in Jiang Shangyu's room for half the night last night and didn't go out until dawn. Besides enjoying such a romantic life, the two of them also got some information. At least in the case that the landlady was in Jiang Shangyu's big bed, Jiang Shangyu had basically completely grasped some of the guest information in the hotel, the daily patrol pattern of the police, some rumors circulating among the people, and so on. These seemingly unimportant little details were crucial to their lurking. There was no one in the hotel who could threaten their safety. The police patrols did not detect any abnormalities. Under such circumstances, Jiang Shangyu's proposal to stay for 1 more day was approved by Li Tianlan. Although he thought that the reason why he stayed for 1 more day was that he didn't have enough fun with the landlady's plump and enchanting body. But, who cared? As long as he wasn't discovered, it didn't matter. He returned to his room. Meditation. About an hour later, there was a knock on the door. Li Tianlan got up and opened the door. Outside the door, Jiang Shangyu stood at the door with a refreshed face, smiled, and gestured to the room. Li Tianlan let him in and waved his hand slightly. The air in the room suddenly began to distort, completely isolating all the sounds inside. Jiang Shangyu raised his eyebrows slightly and turned back to look at Li Tianlan. He chuckled and said, "Senior brother Li, your injury seems to be a little better." "It's not a fatal injury. The human body has the self-healing function." Li Tianlan lit a cigarette and said calmly. There was no reason for his injury not to heal quickly. A whole set of immortality potions worked perfectly on him. The huge vitality continuously supported his physical strength. The speed of his injury recovery was completely stunning. It was no exaggeration to say that every minute, his condition would be better. After a few days of peace, his injury had almost recovered by half. The immortality series of the Wang family of Beihai is really something against the natural order. Jiang Shangyu sighed with emotion. Everyone knew why the master of Samsara Palace went straight to Mount Dibbing for Li Tianlan. The Immortality series, which few people in the Wang family of Beihai had used for hundreds of years, almost every time it appeared, it meant that the Wang family of Beihai had encountered great difficulties. This precious treasure was now used on Li Tianlan. This kind of opportunity really made people jealous. He looked at Li Tianlan, shook his head, and said with a self-deprecating smile, "It seems that I don't have a chance to kill you this time." Li Tianlan took a deep look at Jiang Xianxia and didn't speak. Among the 6 groups in Jianghu state, the Jiang family was an important part of the prince group. But in recent years, it was getting closer and closer to the special warfare group. Jiang Shan, the current patriarch of the Jiang family, a member of the Zhongzhou State Decision-Making Committee, and the top leader of Beijiang Province, used to be an old subordinate of Gu Xingyun. In the prince group, Jiang Shan had always been one of the leaders who opposed the gradual alienation from the special warfare group. Not to mention the future of the Jiang family, at least now, Jiang Xianxia was the veritable #1 expert of the young generation in the prince group. He was a terrible figure who only exposed the exquisite bone but hid his most powerful weapon. Qin Weibai said that Jiang Xianxia had the heavenly king heart. This was definitely an extremely secretive thing, and even only Jiang Shan and Jiang Xianxia, father and son, knew about it. Li Tianlan didn't know how Qin Weibai knew about it, but he would never doubt her words. The heavenly king heart and the exquisite bone. This was simply a veritable heavenly son's qualification. But for many years, Jiang Xianxia had always been steady and steady. Among the top 10 experts of the young generation in Zhongzhou State, Wang Xingxiao and Gu Hanzhan stood side by side. Although Jiang Xianxia's ranking was prominent enough, he was in the shadow of the first 2 people. He was so low-key that no one seemed to know much about him. Not to mention other things, just in terms of his will, how many people in the young generation could match him? In terms of shrewdness, Jiang Xianxia was almost the most terrible young man Li Tianlan had ever seen. Li Tianlan might not be afraid to make an enemy of such a person. But when he thought about it, it was not very comfortable after all. What on earth is Phoenix Pavilion? Li Tianlan suddenly asked. This was the question he had been thinking about for the past few days. Jiang Xianxia wanted to kill him because of Phoenix Pavilion. To be exact, it was because of a woman in this unknown organization. Li Tianlan knew nothing about this unknown organization. Qin Weibai obviously knew something, but it was also obvious that she didn't want to say more. Li Tianlan was also a little helpless about this. Although he knew that it was unlikely to get the answer from Jiang Xianxia, he couldn't help but ask again. If there is a chance, senior brother will know. Jiang Xianxia narrowed his eyes, and a cold killing intent flashed in his eyes. What? Want to fight? Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows slightly, and his smile was a little cold. I know, there is no chance now. Jiang Xianxia's expression immediately returned to normal. Maybe a few days ago, when senior brother was at his weakest, I could have had a try, but I was bluffed by you at that time. These days, your injury is getting better every day. Maybe now I am no longer a match for senior brother. Li Tianlan was silent. Jiang Xianxia had the heavenly king heart that could steadily enter the invincible realm, and he had the exquisite bone. It sounded scary, but a fatal shortcoming could not be ignored. Li Tianlan himself was from the Li family. Wang Xingxiao was from the Wang family of Beihai. Gu Hanzhan was from Kunlun City. Each of these 3 places had the core unique skills that supported them to stand proudly in the dark world for hundreds of years. The 6 paths of reincarnation sword of the Wang family of Beihai was known as the strongest outbreak in the entire dark world. The 10 skills of true martial arts of Kunlun City represented the strongest domain of the invincible realm. The 24 moves of sword of the Li family had the strongest sword intent that could tear everything and break everything. What about the Jiang family? The Jiang family was also prominent now, but compared with these 3 giants that had been passed down for hundreds of years, the Jiang family had no foundation at all, especially in martial arts. They didn't even have a master of the invincible realm. For the Jiang family, Jiang Xianxia was not an inheritor, but a starting point. If he could grow up, decades later, when he entered the invincible realm and left a unique skill that could shock the world, after many, many years, maybe the Jiang family would have the opportunity to become a family force like the Wang family of Beihai. But at least for now, Jiang Xianxia of the Jiang family had a fatal shortcoming in unique skills. Jiang Xianxia seemed to have noticed this, so his martial arts progress was extremely slow, and he hadn't even reached the peak of the fire-flaming realm. The slow progress of martial arts also seemed to show that he had a solid and chilling foundation. Jiang Xianxia was so forbearing. Did he also want to imitate the ancestor of the Wang family of Beihai and create a near-eternal hegemony? Li Tianlan sighed slightly in his heart. One tried to start. The other tried to recover. From this point of view, the two really shouldn't be enemies. If Jiang Xianxia didn't die this time, maybe the news that he had the Heavenly King heart would be exposed, and Jiang Xianxia himself would be in constant trouble. A thought flashed through Li Tianlan's mind subconsciously, and then he shook his head slightly. Qin Weibai had this information but kept it a secret. Obviously, there was a reason. Before she could completely see the general trend of Zhongzhou state, it might be more useful to keep this secret that Jiang Xianxia thought no one else knew in his hand. I'm curious. Seeing that Li Tianlan seemed to be distracted, Jiang Xianxia chuckled and said, I wonder how senior brother Li will compare with Wang Xingxiao and Gu Hanshan if you recover from your injury. Li Tianlan raised his eyelids and glanced at him. He didn't speak, but subconsciously made a comparison in his heart. His current real realm was actually just the ice-condensing realm. Recently, he had been fighting and fleeing constantly, which kept his spirit in a state of tension. After a few days of meditation, he was sure that he could enter the stabilization phase of the ice-condensing realm in the near future. With the effect of the potion, his combat capability could be maintained at the stabilization phase of the fire-flaming realm. With such strength. Facing Wang Xingxiao, who had entered the thunder-shocking realm. In different states, there would be completely different results. In an ordinary fight, it was almost impossible for him to be Wang Xingxiao's opponent. But if they fought to the death, there would also be two results. First, no one could do anything to the other, and second, they would die together. As for Gu Hanshan, who had the Heavenly King heart, Li Tianlan shook his head subconsciously. Gu Hanshan hadn't entered the thunder-shocking realm, but for him now, he was still an extremely difficult opponent. And Jiang Xianxia, Li Tianlan laughed at himself. He was also a character who was not easy to deal with. Maybe when he really entered the fire-flaming realm again, these opponents would be a different situation. Senior brother, you're not a match for them? Jiang Xianxia looked at Li Tianlan's expression and asked calmly. Yeah. Li Tianlan answered perfunctorily. Looking at Jiang Xianxia, he suddenly asked, do you dare to play with me? Ha, Jiang Xiangxia's eyes flashed, and he said with a smile, Senior brother, how do you want to play? Don't you think Changdao is too quiet now? Li Tianlan squinted, and his smile was complicated. I've been quiet for too long since I was a child, so I like lively places. Jiang Xianxia suddenly thought of the dazzling red scarf that he had encountered not long ago. He looked at Li Tianlan, and a trace of hot but extremely cold killing intent flashed in his eyes. Then as you wish. Chapter 167. In the evening, Li Tianlan finally got in touch with Bai Yuming again. When all the elites of Zhongzhou state who sneaked into East Island were being hunted down, this seemingly simple thing was not easy at all. Li Tianlan had only contacted Bai Yuming once during the nearly 1 week he had been hiding in Changdao. After Tianhai Wuji, Luxing Sangxuan, and a large number of special warfare elites of East Island were trapped in Zhongzhou state, East Island took out the extremely rare high-pressure measures in recent decades. Although it seemed that this was still limited to the conflict in the Dark World, East Island, which had the home advantage, could use inexhaustible resources. Satellite monitoring, search system, intelligence force were concentrated, all the hidden cards in East Island were played, and a large number of masters of various systems entered the special warfare system to join the battle. In its own territory, if the National will wanted to do something, basically nothing could not be done. So when Bai Yuming and others were being hunted, every time they got in touch with them, it was equal to increasing the risk of exposure for both sides. And this time, it was Bai Yuming who took the initiative to contact Li Tianlan. The phone rang when Li Tianlan was about to go out for dinner. Seeing the caller ID, Li Tianlan closed the door without hesitation and answered the phone. Tianlan? On the other end of the phone, Bai Yuming's tired voice sounded, with a trace of irrepressible irritation. How are you? Not bad. Li Tianlan was silent for a while, then opened the closed curtains and looked out of the window. It was still raining in Changdao. The rain covered the twilight, and the pedestrians hurried past on the street. It was a cold and quiet scene, nothing unusual. For the time being, I'm safe here. Well, Bai Yuming muttered, seeming to be a little hesitant. But Li Tianlan went straight to the point. He knew how precious the current call time was, so he asked directly, Sister Bai, how are you? What can I do for you here? After a short silence, Bai Yuming finally smiled unabashedly. Her voice was hoarse and tired, and Li Tianlan could even imagine how terrible the face of the young lady of the Bai family was. I'm in a bad situation here. 12 hours ago, I was separated from Yi Fengcheng. Nearly 50 of the 200 elites followed me out of Juban, and now we are about 300 kilometers away from Changdao. As for the others, the situation is not much better. East Island's local power is too strong, and many of us were separated. Tribulation is still watching Shinichi Miyamoto on Fu Peak. Our forces are too scattered now. Li Tianlan obviously frowned, and his heart sank. Bai Yuming was one of the high-level commanders who sneaked into East Island this time. But obviously, her current situation couldn't represent the whole force. To put it bluntly, all the elites who sneaked into East Island had been broken up into countless small forces, and there was no whole existence. The Special Warfare System of East Island's Special Warfare System was to encircling a large number of people, and it was two completely different. And the pursuit was still going on. Li Tianlan didn't forget the dragnet around the whole Changdao. There were still many obstacles on the way for Bai Yuming and the others. The Special Warfare System of East Island chased them all the way, and when the elites of Jianghu State were chased into Changdao, how many of the 2,000 elites would be left? Sister Bai. Do you have any news about Badian and Xianxia? Li Tianlan was silent for a while, and suddenly asked again. Not yet. Bai Yuming's voice was getting lower and lower. Li Tianlan suddenly felt irritated again. In this week, he got in touch with Bai Yuming, Tribulation, and even Yi Fengcheng. But Li Baitian's team of 6 people was the only one he couldn't get in touch with. Like Jianghu, Li Baitian's team was the second group of participants in the hunting operation, and they were responsible for hunting some relatively less important people on the list. Less than 12 hours after Li Tianlan left, they also left the Azure Pool Hot Spring Club. Li Badian, Ning Qiancheng, Su Chu, Yu Qinyan, Yi Huayu, and Dongqing Rushi who acted with them. The 6 of them had been missing for nearly a week. Li Tianlan took a deep breath, forcibly suppressing the negative emotions that kept surging in his heart, and asked directly, Sister Bai, what do you need me to do? I have a map here. It was exchanged by Director Han after sacrificing more than a dozen elites in Changdao. Tianlan, everyone is in a bad situation now, and our strength is too scattered. When we finally rush into Changdao, we will face the tight encirclement outside Changdao, and we will definitely suffer heavy casualties. So we hope you can do something for Jianghu State. Even if we can reduce the casualties of our elites, it will be good. Bai Yuming said softly. Li Tianlan's eyes suddenly lit up. That map, it's the current defense map of Changdao, and the strength evaluation of some related experts. Tianlan, I know you are with Jianghu. If you two act together, you can help us a lot. And we will also report this achievement to the military of Jianghu State and Kunlun City, and then. Sister Bai, you don't have to say so much. Li Tianlan took the initiative to interrupt Bai Yuming. In fact, that's what we are going to do. It's just that we are still collecting information about the defense of Changdao. Jiang Shangyu and I were going to test the water tonight. If we have the map in your hand, it will be much more convenient for us to do things. If that's the case, it couldn't be better. There was finally a hint of joy in Bai Yoming's voice, and then her tone became cautious. But Tianlan, you must remember to act according to your capabilities. Even if you can only create some slight chaos for them, it is self-evident that it will help us. Li Tianlan agreed. In fact, he didn't need Bai Yuming to say this, because he knew how valuable his life was. But in this way, once Bai Yuming and others entered Changdao, wouldn't it be exactly what East Island wanted? Sister Bai, are we really going to use Changdao as the place of the final battle? Li Tianlan asked in a low voice. Bai Yuming seemed to be stunned, and then she sighed slightly and said calmly, we have no choice, just like the elites of East Island are in Huading. Changdao is the place chosen by East Island for the final battle. We have to go there even if we don't want to. Now the situation is complicated, and the direction of Changdao is the only direction where we can survive. If we don't go there, where can we go? But now we are scattered, and our resistance is very weak. East Island may have decided to kill us all on the way. But they didn't reserve too much power in Changdao, so now Changdao, which is chosen as the battlefield by East Island, is also the best way for us to escape. We have to go there even if we don't want to. She pretended to be relaxed and smiled, and continued, if this is a war, now you and Jiang Shangyu are the vanguard going deep into the enemy's rear. Tianlan, be careful. You must be careful. Li Tianlan nodded and said yes. Don't worry, our situation will get better soon. The Battle of Zhongzhou State has been over for a long time, and all the dark superpowers should make up their minds. Bai Yuming said again, and then hung up the phone. A few seconds later, a high-definition map was directly sent to Li Tianlan's mobile phone. Li Tianlan looked at the map silently, deep in thought. All the dark superpowers should also make up their minds? Indeed. After the Battle of Zhongzhou State ended, there was no need to hide the plot of Zhongzhou State. The two invincible realm superiors and a large number of elites of East Island were trapped in Zhongzhou State. Now the special warfare system of East Island was in an unprecedentedly weak state. Even some of East Island's allies might not let go of such an opportunity. Not only the Dark World, but also the allies in any field were united because of interests. It was not strange for them to turn against each other for interests. The interests didn't matter whether they were enemies or allies, as long as they were interests. When East Island was empty inside, all the superpowers took advantage of the weakness and turned the special warfare system of East Island into a chaotic dark pattern similar to that of Northern Europe. This was a good situation for all the dark superpowers. All the people in the world attacked East Island together? If that was the case, their situation would be much better. Facing the power of the whole dark world, no matter how arrogant East Island was, it had to have scruples. There was a soft knock on the door. Li Tianlan opened the door and looked at Jiang Shangyu who was standing outside. Before he spoke, Li Tianlan nodded and signaled him to come in. Jiang Shangyu walked in with some confusion. He looked at Li Tianlan and said in confusion, "What's wrong? Look at this first." Li Tianlan handed over the map on his mobile phone. I just got in touch with Sister Bai. This is the defense map of the periphery of Changdao. Let's study it and take action tonight. As he spoke, a trace of killing intent flashed in his eyes, hot and firm. The surprise flashed on Jiang Shangyu's face. He looked down at the mobile phone screen. He zoomed in and out of the map on the mobile phone and looked back and forth for nearly 10 minutes. Then he chuckled and said, "This map is very detailed. It even marks the people who need to be killed. We just need to call the names on the list. How much effort can we save? It's not that easy to call the names." Li Tianlan said calmly, "Look at the map first. How many superiors of the thunder-shocking realm are there? Except for a few tricky ones, the rest can basically be risked." Jiang Shangyu shook his head and said calmly, "Your 24 moves of sword is unparalleled in the world. With me, we can definitely give everyone a surprise if we cooperate. Li Tianlan was about to speak, but he suddenly looked up. He narrowed his eyes slightly and stared at Jiang Shangyu in front of him. Jiang Shangyu's expression was calm, but there was a hint of playfulness in his eyes. 24 moves of sword? Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes. You are indeed the successor of the Li family. Jiang Shangyu stared at Li Tianlan and said thoughtfully, in this case, Gu Hanshan has a mortal enemy, and Wang Xingxiao's life will not be easy. Li Tianlan looked at Jiang Shangyu in silence and suddenly said, how do you know? I didn't think about it before. After all, the Li family has been quiet for too long. Jiang Shangyu shook his head and said, but the battle between the master of Samsara Palace and the governor of Kunlun City reminded the whole dark world that your relationship with Samsara is not a secret. In this way, it is reasonable to guess your identity. I think now I am not the only one who has the same guess, other forces also have the same suspicion. It's just that I'm sure now. Li Tianlan was a little lost in thought. His heart kept sinking, and he had begun to imagine the consequences of his identity being exposed. A sharp murderous intent suddenly appeared beside him. Li Tianlan was shocked. In an instant, he switched places with the shadow. When he appeared again, he was already behind Jiang Shangyu. At that moment, Jiang Shangyu had quietly taken a step forward. He was less than a meter away from the shadow. Since you know my identity, you should know that I am a mortal enemy of Kunlun City and the so-called Phoenix Pavilion. Even if you do it for a woman in Phoenix Pavilion, it has nothing to do with me. Do you still want to kill me? Li Tianlan frowned, but his eyes had become completely cold. Why does it have nothing to do with me if we are mortal enemies? Chapter 168. It was still raining in Changdao at night. The light raindrops fell to the ground in the wind. In the late night air, everything around seemed to be a little bit cooler. The mountain forest was slightly undulating in the wind and rain. Occasionally, some leaves fell with the wind. The sky was dark and gloomy. Walking in the forest at night, an indescribable sense of gloom and belonging lingered in one's heart like a shadow and never dissipated. In the grass that was covered with rainwater, a resolute figure was holding the sniper rifle in his hand with concentration. The black muzzle of the rifle poked out of the grass. His attention was completely focused as he carefully observed everything in his line of sight through the sniper scope. Position 16 is safe. In the dark, he gently wiped the rain off his face and said softly in Japanese. Position 17 is safe. 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 A series of silent reports came from the familiar voice. In the grass, the sniper's eyes flashed and he continued, be careful to hide. He reached out his hand and gently stroked the sniper rifle in his hand. His careful and gentle movement was like stroking his lover, and he couldn't let go of it. This was a sniper rifle that was rarely used in the military of East Island. It was more of a cannon than a gun. Its caliber of nearly 50 millimeters was enough to prove its terrifying power. This kind of gun, or cannon, was codenamed Holy Thunder in East Island. It could be said that it was the most powerful weapon that the special warfare system of East Island could equip its elites in batches. Holy Thunder was nearly 3 meters long and extremely heavy. It was undoubtedly a little inconvenient on the battlefield where snipers needed to move flexibly. But the heavy gun body and the great power made some sharpshooters who were confident in their marksmanship in East Island like it. Holy Thunder could only shoot 3 bullets in 5 minutes, but its superpower was enough to break the ice layer condensed by an ice-condensing realm expert with all his strength. This was a real killing weapon. But its shortcomings were as obvious as its advantages. Because of the excessive emphasis on power, Holy Thunder's shooting speed was so slow that many people couldn't accept it. All kinds of data showed that Holy Thunder's shooting speed could only reach half the speed of an ordinary sniper rifle. This speed was also fast, but it gave the opponent at least half a second to consider when dealing with an expert, which also tested the shooter's reaction speed and prediction accuracy. However, the reason why the Divine Thunder could be called a cannon was naturally not because of its ridiculously large body, but because of the Divine Thunder's lethality. The moment the bullet exploded, it could cover an area of at least 15 meters around it. Even an ordinary expert in the fire-flaming realm might be injured by a shot. In any case, this kind of gun, which had obvious advantages and disadvantages, was a real treasure in the whole of East Island. Except for the real elites, no one else could use it. He gently stroked the body of the gun and recalled the scene a few hours ago when he pulled the trigger and blew up the head of a woman 400 meters away. The ice wall was shattered by that shot, and the bullet pierced through the skull. Fresh blood and brain matter burst out together with the rain. The entire scene was filled with an extremely cold and ruthless feeling. It was said that they were elites of the special warfare system of Jianghu state. A few women, the stupid Shina Sao, actually wanted to rush over to take revenge. What a joke. She seems to be a very young woman. I wonder what she tastes like. As his thoughts ran wild, another shadow flashed in the corner of his sniping scope. His attention was suddenly focused, and he looked forward through the sniper scope. In his sight, the darkness was drifting away gently. In front of him, there was nothing but the falling rain and flying leaves. Was there something wrong with his eyes? He subconsciously turned the muzzle and looked around, hesitating whether or not he should sound a warning. "Here you are," a soft, almost murmuring voice sounded gloomily in his ear, abruptly and without any warning. The sniper in the grass shivered obviously. When he was highly focused, he was suddenly frightened. His first reaction was not to sound a warning, but to scream out of instinct. A palm had already reached over and covered his mouth. The palm squeezed his mouth tightly, and a silver dagger was almost stabbed into his throat at the same time. Puff! The blade of the dagger was slightly longer, and the tip of the knife went straight through his neck. Blood sprayed, and the dagger with cold light was suddenly retracted. Bang! In less than a second, a gunshot that shook the whole mountain forest suddenly sounded. The light of the silver dagger disappeared, and the figure disappeared at the same time. The bullet whistled from another direction and landed on number 16's position like a cannonball. Within a radius of more than 10 meters, all the grass was uprooted immediately. Number 16's body, which was not completely dead, was swallowed by the fire and turned into a pile of ashes in an instant. The whole mountain forest seemed to be completely alarmed. The gunshot thought for a moment and then disappeared. There was no report, no curse, only silence, as if the divine thunder had accidentally gone off because it was out of control. Charge, change direction, move forward, change position. The rain all over the sky tilted forward as he moved forward. There seemed to be a sudden storm sweeping through the mountain forest, and a shadow had already approached the second sniper like a ghost. Number 7, damn it, what are you doing? Swoosh. Before the second sniper could finish his words, a silver light suddenly flashed, and the shining dagger had directly pierced his head. The dagger was quickly pulled out. Before the blood that sprayed upward fell to the ground, the figure that did not seem to stop at all had already approached the third sniper. The slaughter in the night was like cutting grass. "You're too slow," Li Tianlan said in a very calm tone. "Senior brother Jiang, are you a tortoise? A tortoise race with a hare? I like this story. If I were the tortoise in the story, I wouldn't mind." Puff! In his sight, the third sniper had already realized that something was wrong. He suddenly jumped out of the grass and intended to change his sniping position, but Li Tianlan's figure had already arrived in front of him. The two sides crossed each other in the darkness. In the whistling wind, the third sniper's chest suddenly sprayed a line of blood 2 or 3 meters long. Bang! In another direction, another gunshot sounded, but it instantly missed. "You're willing to be a tortoise, but I'm not interested in being a rabbit." In the calm voice, the dagger instantly turned into a double sword. The sword light lit up, and the crisscrossed sword intent rushed into the forest. Another sniper had just turned around, and his body was directly torn in half by the sword energy. The fourth one. Bang, bang, bang. With Li Tianlan's calm voice, at least 3 sniper rifles around him shot at him at the same time. Fire, explosion. The divine thunder kept roaring, and a deep pit was blown up within a radius of tens of meters. The power is good, but do you want to kill me with these useless hands? Then you're bound to lose. The sword edge flashed in the air. Another head flew into the sky. The fifth, the moment the gunshot sounded, the converged sword edge suddenly shook, and the surrounding air suddenly twisted. The head in the air was crushed into a bloody mist by the twisted air before it fell to the ground. The sword intent condensed and did not disperse. Like a snow-white waterfall, it rushed over a distance of hundreds of meters in an instant. The whole mountain forest was silent for a moment. Well, the sixth one. Li Tianlan's tone was cold. Senior brother Jiang, you're too slow. Remember our bet. If I win, you must tell me what Phoenix Pavilion is and about my father. I just said I would think about it. Jiang Shangyu's tone was calm. Li Tianlan smiled, but his eyes were full of cold killing intent. Although he was curious about Phoenix Pavilion, he did not intend to deliberately investigate it. But today, Jiang Shangyu's rhetorical question almost completely messed up his mind. Phoenix Pavilion? His father's death? Was there a relationship between the two? Jiang Shangyu did not say it clearly. He seemed to be deliberately leading him to do something, but Li Tianlan had no choice. Regardless of whether what Jiang Shangyu said was true or not, at least for now, he had to take this as a clue. Now this bet was also proposed by Li Tianlan. The competition was the number and speed of killing tonight. The winner had the right to make a request to the loser, and Li Tianlan's request was to make Jiang Shangyu spit out everything about his father and Phoenix Pavilion. He did not even expect Jiang Shangyu to agree to this matter. But for some reason, Jiang Shangyu hesitated and actually agreed. Although he only said he would think about it, and although Li Tianlan noticed something wrong at that moment, since the bet could be made, he had no reason not to win. Killing. Killing as fast as possible. The seventh one. The eighth one. On the other side of the jungle, Jiang Shangyu was also moving. His speed seemed to be much slower than Li Tianlan's. In Li Tianlan's hands, when the eighth sniper fell, the fifth one was beside him. However, his expression was still calm. His gaze occasionally shifted as he observed his surroundings without batting an eyelid. Still not making a move? So cautious? Now, he should be at his fastest speed. How long do you want to observe? As he spoke, he shook his fists hard and directly smashed the head of the sixth sniper. The forest in front of them was surrounded by a main national highway into Changdao. On both sides were hillsides and forests. At the foot of the mountain, East Island had set up a temporary and obscure headquarters. About 600 East Island elites were gathered here. There were less than 50 people in the headquarters, and the rest of them were scattered into the forest, making a nearly 20-kilometer-long path in the forest. If there were really elites of Jianghu state breaking into Changdao here, the hundreds of snipers in the forest would definitely be the most difficult point to deal with. This was also the main goal of Jiang Shangyu and Li Tianlan tonight. In addition to the main goal, the two also wanted to try to see if they could kill Nani Xiu, the commander of this area. Nani Xiu, the captain of East Island's Hanzhou Special Warfare Brigade, held the rank of lieutenant general, was in charge of everything in the special warfare system of Hanzhou Island. His status was similar to that of the director of the Provincial Special Operations Bureau of Jianghu State. However, East Island only had 3 big islands, and Nani Xiu could be in charge of one of them. His status was still higher than that of dozens of directors of the Special Operations Bureau of Jianghu State, and his strength was naturally higher. He was an expert at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm who was infinitely close to the half-step invincible realm. In the entire special warfare system of East Island, Nani Xiu could be said to be one of the well-deserved giants, whether in strength or status. In the current defense of East Island in Changdao, there were more than 10 experts of the thunder-shocking realm, and Nani Xiu was definitely one of the toughest bones. Nani Xiu sat in the headquarters. It would take him at least 5 minutes to go up and down the mountain. Li Tianlan and Jiang Shangyu planned to kill nearly 100 snipers in the forest with 2 or 3 rounds of harassment, and then they would join forces to besiege Nani Xiu. Even if they couldn't kill him, it would be a good result to make him seriously injured. As long as this defense line was loosened, it would be much easier to break into Changdao from here in the near future. The 15th. Li Tianlan's cold voice continued to ring. The 9th sniper in front of him fell down. Jiang Shanyu casually made a secret signal on a thick tree around him. Bai Yuming actually gave them 2 tasks. The first was to hunt. Just like what they were doing now, they tried their best to disrupt the defense line of Changdao so that the elites of Zhongzhou state could break out. The second was to unite. When everyone rushed into Changdao, countless people formed small groups, and it was extremely difficult to contact each other. It was also very difficult to gather these people together again. If they couldn't gather in Changdao, so many small groups would be annihilated by the East Island officials sooner or later. The 16th. Jiang Shanyu sighed slightly and looked around. It was still quiet. He sighed softly and said to himself, "You missed the best opportunity." He took a deep breath and said softly, "Let's go." Looking at the time, Nani Xiu is probably coming. Li Tianlan was silent for a while, then said, "Gather at the predetermined place and wait for the next action." "You're leaving?" Before Nani Xiu came, in the grass less than a kilometer away from Li Tianlan, a black figure aimed at Li Tianlan through the sniper scope. He sighed slightly and said, "What a pity." The black figure lay in the grass, perfectly integrated with the darkness and the grass. He lay motionless and watched Li Tianlan's figure disappear through the sniper scope. A playful smile gradually appeared on his face. "But I've probably observed your shooting pattern, little guy. So, you're going to die." In the wind and rain, he slightly pressed down the top hat on his head, and at the same time, pulled the old red scarf around his neck. 2 guns were quietly placed beside him, one long and one short. One looked ferocious, the other simple. In the entire dark world, these 2 famous guns could be said to be famous. Although they were not murderous weapons, they seemed to be not much worse than the 12 murderous weapons. It was hard to say whether these 2 guns made the gun king of the dark world, or the gun king of the dark world made these 2 guns. In the eyes of everyone in the dark world, this man and these guns were completely one. Famous gun whisper. Famous gun grim smile. In the darkness, the hand pulling the red scarf gently fell on the long gun. His eyes left the sniper scope, shining with calm and clear brilliance like cold stars in the night. Li Tianlan's figure had disappeared. He stood up from the bushes and followed them without batting an eyelid. In the dark world, no one knew his name. The Gun King, who could suppress a group of thunder-shocking realm experts on the killer list with his superb marksmanship and 2 famous guns, was now ranked 5th on the killer list. His code name was Heavenly Calamity. Chapter 169. It was nearly 1:00 in the morning. The whole mountain forest suddenly boiled with this fierce and swift raid. A large number of East Island elites rushed into the mountain forest and kept wandering in the forest. Whether it was East Island plotting against Zhongzhou State or Zhongzhou State plotting against East Island, this operation could be said to be a conflict in the dark world. It was not suitable for East Island to send troops to encircle and suppress them, but a large number of military superiors temporarily joined the special warfare system of East Island, which made East Island extremely abundant in manpower for a while. Changdao was not a small place. According to the map sent by Han Shishuan, there were at least 20 points around Changdao. With the nearby national highway as the core, this line of defense with a radius of more than 10 kilometers was just one of the points. This point was not even the one with the largest number of people. But this was not the one with the largest number of people. There were nearly 600 elites, the elites measured by the national level. Each of them was at least in the stabilization phase of the ice-condensing realm, which was not something ordinary soldiers could compare with. In just a few minutes, after more than 20 snipers fell silent one by one, all the elites suddenly moved as fast as they could. The mountain forest began to boil. Compared to the vast area of the mountain forest, the hundreds of people who suddenly appeared in the mountain forest were actually not many, but they moved extremely fast. They were the real elites. Once they took action, the whole mountain forest seemed to be filled with shadows and murderous intent in an instant. Li Tianlan ran wildly in the mountain forest along the way he came, leaving the falling rain and trees behind him. This road was the safest now. When he came here, there were a lot of hidden posts, but they had been cleared. Because he and Jiang Shanyu moved too fast, in just a few minutes, they directly retreated before the other side could react. The whole road could be said to be flat and peaceful. To be exact, East Island set up a total of 17 points of defense in Changdao, and the mountain forest that Nani Xiu was in charge of was one of them. There were not many people, but because Nani Xiu was a superior who was infinitely close to the half-step invincible realm, it could be said to be one of the most difficult points to deal with. Li Tianlan and Jiang Shanyu's plan was very simple. They intended to use 2 days to cause great chaos in this extremely critical defense point. On the first day, they naturally killed nearly 100 snipers here. Holy Thunder could be said to be the most famous killing weapon in the East Island military. A single one could pose a certain degree of threat to a fire-flaming realm expert. When a large number of Holy Thunders were concentrated and fired at the same time, even a thunder-shocking realm expert couldn't escape. At this time, there were at least 30 Holy Thunders in this forest, and dozens of sniper rifles with slightly less power. If all these people were killed, the casualty rate of the elites of Zhongzhou state breaking out from here would be greatly reduced. On the first day, he would kill the sniper here. On the second day, he would try to assassinate Nani Xiu. At the very least, he would be seriously injured. If this plan could be successfully completed, then Li Tianlan and Jiang Shanyu's task of destroying this key point would be considered completed. Their mission was to hunt and kill, and their main goal was to create as much chaos as possible in some key defense points, reducing the pressure on their compatriots to break out of the encirclement, and not to kill everyone in these defense points. And they couldn't do it. Even if 100 people besieged Li Tianlan and Jiang Shanyu, Li Tianlan wouldn't be able to escape, not to mention that there were 600 elites above the ice-condensing realm at this point at this time. 100 elites in the stabilization phase of the ice-condensing realm gathered together. In the drizzling weather, the power of these 100 people could almost instantly condense an ice wall with a thickness of more than 100 meters. With a thickness of more than 100 meters, it was definitely more exaggerated and solid than any so-called solid fortress or city wall in history. Li Tianlan had wind and thunder veins, but he wasn't an immortal. No matter how sharp his sword intent was, no matter how hot his flame was, and even if he had 10 wind and thunder veins in his body, it was impossible to completely destroy this 100-meter thick ice wall in an instant. Moreover, once real martial arts masters fought, it would often be a chaotic scene of light and shadow, flying sword intent, ice and fire intertwining, air and lightning lingering. The scene looked gorgeous and chaotic, and the destructive power was also extremely shocking. But at the end of the day, whether it was the chi-controlling realm, the ice-condensing realm, or the fire-flaming realm or the thunder-shocking realm, those seemingly gorgeous means of attack were actually substances that vibrated in the air with human strength. The chi-controlling realm vibrated the air with physical strength. The ice-condensing realm instantly condensed the moisture in the air with physical strength. The fire-flaming realm evaporated the moisture in the air and started a fire with tyrannical strength in the dry air by friction. To put it bluntly, this seemingly magical thing only relied on 2 things. Great power. Focused will. If one's power was not strong enough, he couldn't enter the 4 realms of martial arts. If one's will was not focused enough, he couldn't enter the 4 realms of martial arts either. The moment a master attacked, there would be ice and fire, which were the best embodiment of their absolute power and focused will. As for power and will, they were consumables. Although they could be replenished, if they were consumed too much at once in a short time, it would still have a fatal impact on their combat effectiveness. With Li Tianlan's current strength, the siege of 100 ice-condensing realm elites, even without considering the desperate thickness of the ice wall, could drag Li Tianlan to the point where he seriously lacked both power and will. At that time, Li Tianlan could only rely on his fists and feet. Even because of the loss of power, he was not even as good as an ordinary master who had not yet entered the 4 realms of martial arts. Li Tianlan and Jiang Shanyu could barely be said to be the peak power of the young generation in the dark world. But it was almost impossible for this kind of power to kill hundreds of elites in a short time, including several fire-flaming realm experts and experts who were infinitely close to the half-step invincible realm. In 2 days, they could get rid of the snipers here, and it would be best if they could seriously injure Nani Shou. That was the limit. And this was just point 1. Point 1 was named by Li Tianlan and Jiang Shanyu. It was located in the mountain forest in the south of Changdao. Point 2 was in the east. According to Li Tianlan and Jiang Shanyu's plan, it would also take 2 days to get there. Point 3 was the trickiest. It was located in the west of Changdao. It could be said to be the most heavily guarded place in East Island. Several thundershocking realm experts were all in that direction. And most of the small groups that were being chased in Jianghu state would enter Changdao from that direction. More than 10 defense points were all in the west of Changdao. Li Tianlan and Jiang Shanyu hadn't confirmed which defense point was point 3, but they had left the most time for point 3. 3 whole days passed. As for point 4, there was no point 4. 3 points, 1 week. The elites of Jianghu state would definitely break into Changdao within a week. As for those who didn't come after a week, there was basically no hope. The surrounding trees were left behind, and the pursuers were getting further and further away. Li Tianlan kept moving forward with a serious look on his face. His dressing had changed a lot. A dark gray night suit almost covered his whole body. What was even weirder was that he wore a pair of sunglasses that could almost cover half of his face on the bridge of his nose. In the night, the sunglasses kept flashing, reflecting everything around him to Li Tianlan's sight. This was a pair of sunglasses with many functions: ranging, reconnaissance, positioning, navigation, thermal imaging, signal jamming, and to a certain extent, it even had a certain bulletproof function. In an unfamiliar environment, these were undoubtedly the most practical things, especially the thermal imaging and ranging functions. Looking for a sniper with this thing was like catching a firefly in the middle of the night. Every time he caught one, he would be able to catch one. Gray clothes, sunglasses, silver sword, silver spear. Li Tianlan finally took off all the camouflage for the sky attack. For tonight's action, he carried the sky attack that the Dongqing clan gave him on his back, with 2 bullets in it. 2 bullets. It didn't sound like much, but when Thunder God gave the sky attack to Li Tianlan, there were no more than 20 bullets in it. During the days when he was chased by Mai Shiranui, Li Tianlan had used up 5 bullets. At close range, the power of the sky attack combined with this special bullet was simply unparalleled. Li Tianlan shot 5 times, and 3 times he missed. But the 2 thundershocking realm experts he hit died on the spot without exception. The holy thunder of East Island was a killing weapon, but compared with the sky attack, it was nothing. I've gotten rid of them. In the darkness, Jiang Shanyu's voice rang out. How about you? He killed fewer people than Li Tianlan, which meant that he didn't go deep into the forest as Li Tianlan did, so it was naturally less difficult for him to retreat. I'm almost there. Li Tianlan said calmly, let's meet at the predetermined place. The second raid will be carried out in 2 hours. You're too slow, and they're getting more and more vigilant. If you still don't show your real skills in the next action, our results will be worse than now. Jiang Shanyu chuckled and said nothing. Bang! Li Tianlan wanted to say something more, but a fierce and loud gunshot suddenly rang in his ears. In an instant, Li Tianlan didn't even have time to think. He almost instinctively changed his position with the shadow. Because the shadow appeared too quickly, it only appeared less than 5 meters behind him, but it was enough to make the opponent's shot completely miss. Li Tianlan's cold eyes swept slightly. 100 meters ahead, a red blurry figure directly appeared on the lens of his sunglasses. The opponent missed the shot, jumped up from the hiding place, turned around, and ran. Li Tianlan sneered. Without hesitation, he directly chased after him. Extreme sprint. The distance between the 2 sides was instantly shortened. The strength of the sniper in front of him was obviously not comparable to that of an ordinary sniper. He could be said to be the elite of the elites, and his speed was close to that of a fire-flaming realm expert. But as Li Tianlan's speed got faster and faster, he became more and more nervous and looked back from time to time. 50 meters. 30 meters. 20 meters. The distance between the two sides was getting closer and closer. There was a flash of killing intent in Li Tianlan's eyes, and a shadow directly appeared in front of the sniper. He raised the long sword in his hand. The moment the sword light lit up, what appeared in front of Li Tianlan was a face without any panic or fear. The sniper's eyes were unusually calm, but his expression was full of ferocity and cruelty. The sword light fell. The sniper raised his arm at the same time. One punch. Boom. In the raging killing intent. In an instant, there was lightning rising in the whole forest, shining and glaring. Chapter 170. There was no sign. The feeling of fatal danger came suddenly. For Li Tianlan, he just wanted to get rid of a sniper lying in ambush on the periphery. Once there was serious chaos in the defense point led by Nani Xiu, this point would become the best breakthrough point for Jianghu state elites to break into Changdao from this direction. Nani Xiu and the sniper here were the most important targets for Li Tianlan and Jiang Shangyu. The former was strong enough to crush most of the elites sneaking into East Island at his peak, and the power of the latter's long-range shooting could not be ignored. If the ordinary elites lying in ambush in the jungle could only chase the elite soldiers of Jianghu state, then the sniper and Nani Xiu could kill the people of Jianghu state. This was the advantage of strength and firepower. Li Tianlan and Jiang Shangyu were almost unafraid of most of the thunder-shocking realm experts when they joined forces. But in the face of Nani Xiu, they didn't even have the confidence to seriously injure him. That was why they paid special attention to the action of eliminating these snipers. Now on the way back, Li Tianlan found a fish that they hadn't found before. What reason did he have not to take action? So Li Tianlan didn't think much at all. In the face of the sniper's escape, he took action as fast as he could, and the first move was a killing move. For a man like him who was almost invincible in close combat, a sniper in close combat was a non-entity. In the air, the thunderous gunshots swept through the forest. Before the gunshots died down, the shining lightning had suddenly enveloped the nearby forest. Within a radius of more than 10 meters, more than a dozen trees were directly turned into a pile of charcoal at the moment the lightning lit up. The fleeing sniper was wrapped in lightning. He sneered, and the lightning around him formed a big net in the air, directly shrouding Li Tianlan. Boom! In the clear and strange roar, the lightning crisscrossed, and everything around it became blurred. There was only light, dazzling light. The ant in his mind suddenly turned into a dormant tiger. In the vast expanse of light, Li Tianlan could almost clearly smell the smell of death. In a hurry, Li Tianlan just took a step back instinctively. His whole body tightened, and a large ice wall nearly 5 meters thick wrapped around him. Countless flames were brewing inside the ice wall. Ice and fire intertwined. It exuded a kind of cold and almost violent heat. Lightning flashed. The ice wall, which was more than 5 meters thick, completely collapsed at the first moment. The fire inside the ice wall roared and surged out, but it was directly obliterated in a large area of lightning. The broken ice layer flew out. Li Tianlan's figure swayed slightly. At the moment when the lightning was about to envelop his body, his figure had already appeared on a piece of broken ice more than 10 meters away. Desperate chase, shadow symbol formula, night walking. In terms of explosive force alone, the unique skills of the Li family might be a little worse than those of the Wang family of Beihai. But in terms of flexibility and speed, the unique skills of the Li family were truly superior. In this respect, neither the Wang family of Beihai nor Kunlun City could compare with them. No one could imagine how flexible Li Tianlan, who had all the body movements in the map of God of War, could be without seeing it with their own eyes. The lightning shot forward in a straight line, and countless flames and ice shards disappeared in the blinding light. The thunder-shocking realm expert disguised as an ordinary sniper grinned hideously. He stared at Li Tianlan, who was more than 10 meters away, and sneered. How many times can you hide? He moved his body casually and strode forward. Li Tianlan's eyes narrowed tightly, and there was no emotion on his face. His eyes were fixed on the thunder-shocking realm expert in front of him. Although he had guessed it in his heart, he still couldn't believe it. "Who are you?" He paused and said in a cold tone. "Nani Xiao of Benzhou." The moment the lightning flashed again, Nani Xiao's striding figure suddenly accelerated and took off. His figure rushed into the air more than 10 meters away. Like a big bird, he swooped down on Li Tianlan with all his strength. In the lightning, Li Tianlan had time to observe the face of the East Island Special Warfare Giant for the first time. Nani Xiao was not tall, about 1.7 meters tall, which was in line with the standard of East Island men, but his body was extremely strong. His ferocious-looking face looked a little pale in the lightning, but it added a little evil. Extremely bright light kept blooming around him, which was an almost irresistible force. Who would have thought that Nani Xiao, one of the giants of the special warfare system of East Island, would ambush a young man here regardless of his identity? At such a close distance, even if Li Tianlan's body movement was unparalleled in the world, there was almost no hope of escape when there was a gap of nearly 2 realms. The distance of more than 10 meters was shortened in an instant. Nani Xiao rubbed in the air, and the air whistled and twisted at the extreme speed. Flashes of lightning burst out all over him. The lightning spread rapidly toward his arms. The two sides were less than 5 meters apart. Nani Xiao's arms shook, and all the lightning suddenly gathered on his arms. The lightning burst out, and the light extended in his hands. As he waved his arms, before Nani Xiao's body could get close to Li Tianlan, 2 dazzling and dangerous bolts of lightning had already struck Li Tianlan's head. Fierce, swift, and ruthless. It all happened in a second. Li Tianlan only had time to condense a shadow not far away from him. 2 parallel flashes of lightning had already crisscrossed between Nani Xiao's hands. The light flashed in the air, and wherever it passed, the air was completely torn apart. The 2 flashes of lightning crisscrossed and fell. The ghastly and terrible killing intent rose and fell in the mountain forest. Li Tianlan turned slightly and had already switched places with the shadow 20 meters away. Nani Xiao's body was still in the air. Li Tianlan raised his palm slightly. 2 flashes of lightning passed through the shadow of nothingness and fell to the ground with a crash. In the time it takes for a spark to fly off a flint, everything in the mountain forest seemed to be strangely still for a moment. Fallen leaves, raindrops, crushed ice, and flames suddenly stopped. In less than half a second, the lightning that landed on the ground suddenly began to expand amidst a violent roar. A large amount of lightning shot up into the sky, and there were also lightning that flowed and spread on the ground like water. All the stillness disappeared completely, like a painting that was violently torn apart. The trees and the ground within a radius of more than 50 meters shook violently in the surging lightning. The broken trees and turf flew up along with the soil. The sharp light enveloped everything in the vicinity, and then it was the most barbaric destruction. Nani Xiao was in the air. His body was completely wrapped in lightning. Like a flash of lightning, he rushed toward Li Tianlan without a pause. The rain had completely disappeared, leaving only the lightning raging in the mountain forest. Switch places. Switch places. Switch places again. 3 shadows almost lined up in a straight line behind Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan's figure kept flashing, and in the blink of an eye, he moved back nearly 100 meters, but he could not get out of Nani Xiao's attack range. There was a gap of nearly 2 realms between them, and the gap in strength was enough to make up for the lack of body movements. Nani Xiao's body in the air had almost become a ball of light full of lightning. Wherever the ball of light passed, there was a continuous burst. The 2 of them, one advancing and the other retreating, almost instantly opened up a flat path of 100 meters in the mountain forest. Li Tianlan stopped abruptly. In the face of his almost irresistible power, he stopped. An ice wall with a thickness of more than 10 meters suddenly appeared around him. The moment the ice wall appeared, Nani Xiao, in the lightning, vaguely saw the silver human emperor turn into a long sword. The young heavenly son from Jianghu state clenched the hilt of the sword and raised his eyebrows slightly. He still looked to be in a sorry state, but under the illumination of the lightning, his eyes suddenly became fierce. It was an indescribable temperament, and there seemed to be a kind of arrogance and domineering aura that seemed to look down on the world. The ice wall was completely formed. Their line of sight was separated. Between heaven and earth, a vast and crazy sword intent that was almost boundless and empty suddenly rose up in the lightning. Nani Xiao sneered. Although his strength was higher than Li Tianlan's, the latter's body movement was absolutely exquisite. If one chased and the other fled, Li Tianlan estimated that he could survive for a long time. But the other stopped to fight desperately, which was simply courting death. The lightning shrouding him within dozens of meters kept moving forward. Nani Xiao gave a long roar, and the lightning directly condensed into a huge blade surrounded by light with him as the center. The blade hung over Nani Xiao's head. The light was bright, like a blue cold moon shining with pale light. Facing the ice wall more than 10 meters thick, Nani Xiao, with a cold expression, suddenly swung down with one hand. The blade, like a cold moon, surging with endless lightning, cut through the air and slammed hard on the thick ice wall in front of him. Boom! For a moment, the whole forest seemed to shake violently. The lightning, which was condensed to the extreme, cut through the ice wall without any hindrance, and the broken ice flew high into the sky. Almost at the same time, Li Tianlan's fierce and crazy voice rang out. Stop! The air raged by the lightning twisted violently, and even the ice flying in the air stopped abruptly. Only the blade surrounded by lightning still moved forward, but it slowed down for a moment. But a moment was enough for Li Tianlan. Under the sharp light of the lightning, Li Tianlan took a step forward, and his body suddenly became illusory. The blade condensed by lightning cut through Li Tianlan's shadow, but his real body with the sword had already arrived in front of Nani Xiao. Along with his real body, there were two other shadows that looked exactly like him. Li Tianlan's shadow formula was far less flexible than Tribulation's. Now he could only condense 3 shadows. But to be exact, the third shadow could only change positions and had no attack power at all. 3 shadows plus his real body could fool around with his opponent unscrupulously when facing a well-matched opponent. But when facing an expert like Nani Xiao, who was much stronger than him, it was the safest way to leave the shadow that could only change positions in the distance. One step. Li Tianlan came to Nani Xiao almost in one step, dozens of meters away. The Buddhist incantation of 9 words, the flash formula. In Tribulation's Buddhist incantation of 9 words, the shadow formula was the most flexible body movement, the crack formula was the strongest explosion, and the flash formula was the fastest speed. The dried-up rain fell again in the night, gently beating on the forest. On the open space in the forest flattened by the lightning, Li Tianlan's eyes were unprecedentedly focused and sharp. At the same time that the layer of ice shattered, his aura began to skyrocket at an astonishing speed. The stabilization phase of the fire-flaming realm. The peak of the fire-flaming realm. It continued to rise. As Nani Xiao's pupils shrank instinctively, Li Tianlan raised his long sword and stabbed it straight into the sky. Boom! A dull roar in the air flashed and died away. The rain falling around them was directly shattered by the violent sword energy. The 2 shadows followed Li Tianlan and raised their swords at the same time. Li Tianlan's face was pale. His rising aura almost fell to its lowest point in an instant, but the bright sword light pierced the night, shining fiercely and violently in the dark forest. The majestic and vast sword intent rose out of thin air, as if covering the sky. The rain falling from the sky did not fall for a moment, but all rolled back into the air. The killing intent in the forest converged. Only the sword light fell from the sky with the majestic and ethereal sword intent. The temperature in the air became extremely hot, and there seemed to be a dim yellow light in the darkness. Then the light faded. In the vast world, the sword light shone above. The sky within a radius of nearly 100 meters seemed to shine with an extremely dazzling and blurred color under this sword. The sword intent was like fire, and its momentum was like thunder. At this second, Li Tianlan's aura was weak, but his solemn figure holding the sword was truly peerless, with a kind of demeanor that could overturn everything. The demeanor of a sword. There was only sword light above. But Li Tianlan became a sword. The strongest sword. This sword had completely surpassed the fire-flaming realm, but it was still a step away from the thunder-shocking realm. Forcibly restoring his strength beyond the fire-flaming realm without touching the thunder-shocking realm was Li Tianlan's most powerful sword move without damaging his foundation. All the power. All the sword intent. And all the outbreak. His indifferent voice filled the air, weak, but with a high majesty. Break. He held the long sword in his hand tightly, and without any hesitation, he slashed hard at Nani Shou. The two shadows beside him also slashed down at the same time. Chapter 171. There's another chapter ahead, 2 chapters in a row. Brothers, don't miss it. The sword slashed down. In Nani Shou's roar, lightning lit up all over his body in an instant. In the air, Li Tianlan's body swayed slightly, and he had already switched places with the third shadow dozens of meters away. His long sword didn't hit Nani Shou, but the illusory and colorful sword light in the air had already fallen straight toward Nani Shou. The sword light and the lightning merged. Nani Shou's not tall but extremely strong body shook violently. There was a sudden explosion in the air, and a wave of air visible to the naked eye surged and spread with Nani Shou as the center. His body hung in the air without landing, but there was a deep pit nearly 20 meters in diameter under his feet. A lot of smoke and dust flew up. Only the lightning in the air was still shining, unextinguished. Now. Li Tianlan's eyes lit up, blood gushing from the corners of his mouth. Now. Almost at the same time, in the grass less than 300 meters behind Li Tianlan, Heavenly Calamity, who was fiddling with his red scarf, also flashed slightly. At this moment, Li Tianlan had used all the shadows. This was the best chance. His hands fell directly on the sniper rifle named Grim Smile in front of him. The bullet was loaded. Aim. At the same time, Li Tianlan took off the sky attack from his back. The wind and rain filled the sky. He stood where he was, and the muzzle was aimed directly at Nani Shou in a lot of smoke and dust. He stepped forward and raised the muzzle slightly. Shooting in a standing position. The smoke and dust spread. At a distance of tens of meters and hundreds of meters, Li Tianlan and Heavenly Calamity twitched the corners of their mouths at the same time. They pulled the trigger. Bang! 2 dull gunshots, like a low roar, rang out almost at the same time. The sounds were mixed and almost completely merged into one. Li Tianlan aimed the muzzle at Nani Shou. Heavenly Calamity aimed the muzzle at Li Tianlan. The dull sound reverberated in the mountains for thousands of meters. The sky attack's long and narrow bullet with strange patterns rushed straight out of the muzzle. A tongue of flame nearly half a meter long spurted out of the muzzle, and the bullet had already shot toward Nani Shou with a violent whistling sound. At this moment, all the air in front of Li Tianlan seemed to become a tangible paper or canvas. The bullet rushed through the air, completely condensing, twisting, and compressing all the air nearby. A huge vortex with a diameter of nearly 3 meters suddenly took shape in front of him. Under the huge recoil, Li Tianlan's back leg shook violently. He, who was in a weak state, managed to fire a shot, but his back leg was pulled by the vortex in front of him. Li Tianlan, who was already seriously injured, spat out a mouthful of blood and didn't even have the strength to move. The sense of fatal danger behind him was clear. It was almost at his back in an instant, approaching the center of his back. It was like a wave of fire with sharp bullets, piercing through the night, piercing through the wind and rain, easily tearing apart the boundary between life and death, like the grim smile of the Grim Reaper, directly approaching his heart. Death was at hand. Li Tianlan looked calm and didn't even look back. All of his strength had been used up. He was truly powerless against the approaching death behind him. Li Tianlan's eyes were as calm as water. There was no unwillingness or bitterness, only some attachment and reluctance. Death seemed to drag on time. Everything in his life emerged in his mind. It was not until this moment that Li Tianlan suddenly realized that there was really nothing to remember in his life. In addition to those desperate training, there was only the guilt for the Li family's cemetery and the reluctance to part with Qin Weibai. That perfect face appeared in his mind. Her voice, her smile, and her every movement were all so clear. I really want to see her again. Li Tianlan closed his eyes gently, and the trace of attachment in his eyes gradually disappeared. He closed his eyes. There was darkness in front of him. There was dead silence in his perception. Is this death? But Li Tianlan suddenly opened his eyes. In his sight was still the mountain forest destroyed by the battle. But the sense of fatal danger behind him was gone, the heat was gone, the vortex in front of him was gone, and even the lightning flashing on Nani Shou dozens of meters away had completely disappeared. There was one more person in front of Li Tianlan. It was a slender man, about 1.8 meters tall. He looked like a young man, but also like a middle-aged man. In the night, he wore a white windbreaker, the corners of which fluttered gently in the night wind. In the darkness, Li Tianlan could not see his face clearly. He could only vaguely see that he seemed to have a face of unknown age. A somewhat strange face. It was not ugly, but a kind of handsomeness that chilled people's hearts. He seemed to be an Oriental. A handsome and even enchanting Oriental. He looked down at Li Tianlan. His eyes were bright. They were clear and cold, without any emotion. Finally, he slowly opened his mouth. His soft and cold tone echoed in Li Tianlan's ears. It was English. Li Tianlan frowned. He couldn't understand a word. The positioning device in his ear had a translation function, but at this time it was silent and seemed to be broken. Looking at Li Tianlan's silence, the enchanting man slightly raised his eyebrows and changed to Japanese. Li Tianlan sighed slightly and said with a headache, "Can you speak human language?" He immediately realized that his tone was a little disrespectful. He shook his head with a wry smile. "I don't mean anything else. Are you an invincible realm expert?" A smile flashed in the eyes of the enchanting and handsome man. But even if it was a gentle emotion, there was also a trace of coldness in his eyes. "No. Just a little bit. Just a little bit." This time, he spoke in perfect Chinese. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows slightly. Although he knew it was impossible, he couldn't help asking, "Are you from Jianghu State?" The man's eyes flickered slightly and he shook his head. He shook his arm and said softly in that cold tone that sounded a little chilling, "Well, the elite of Jianghu State, I robbed you of your military exploits, but I saved your life. You don't mind, do you?" Only then did Li Tianlan find that the enchanting man was holding a bloody head in his hand. Blood kept dripping from the head, but there was no blood on the man's snow-white windbreaker. The head swayed in his hand, and its eyes were wide open, as if it was extremely frightened before death. Li Tianlan's eyes narrowed slightly. That was Nani Shou's head. Nani Shou, who was infinitely close to the half-step invincible realm. What on earth happened at that moment just now? Nani Shou died, and the sky attack's shot was blocked. Similarly, the shot behind him, which was no weaker than the sky attack, was also blocked. And all this seemed to happen at the same time in a second. The man who did all this was not an invincible realm expert yet. Just a little bit? How much was this little bit? Li Tianlan's mind was a little confused. He rubbed his forehead. After escaping from death, he instinctively wanted to speak, even if what he said was nonsense. Pointing to the head, he asked, "Did you kill Nani Shou?" "Yes." The devilish man had a cold smile on his face. "This is one of my main goals this time. Originally, I wanted to kill all the elites of East Island here. Slaughtering and whatnot, isn't it exciting to think about it? But there are already 3 strong guys fighting over there. I came here in advance, just in time to see this wonderful battle. Your sword move is good, and that shot is not weak either. But you can't kill Nani Shou, so I can't be considered robbing your military exploits. Well, besides, I saved your life. Li Tianlan shook his head with a wry smile and said, anyway, thank you. You don't have to. The man in white shook his head and sighed. I always feel like I'm taking advantage of you, so, he thought for a moment, reached into his arms, took out a small bottle, and threw it to Li Tianlan. If you trust me, eat it, and it will help you recover a little combat strength. Besides, I'll tell you who wanted to kill you this time, and then we'll call it even. How about that? Li Tianlan froze for a moment, holding the small bottle in his hand, and kept silent. He didn't doubt what poison was in the bottle. The man was obviously a super expert who was only half a step or even a little step away from the invincible realm. It would be a piece of cake for him to deal with him now, so there was no need to poison him. There was no doubt that it was healing medicine. What he doubted was the man's motive. The expert of the half-step invincible realm in front of him seemed a little too easy to talk to and also a little too easygoing. They met by chance, and the man gave him healing medicine when he had saved his life. This kind of kindness made Li Tianlan instinctively hesitate. He couldn't kill Nani Xiu with that shot just now, so Nani Xiu didn't rob him of his military exploits. This was a truth that both sides understood. Now it was he who owed Nani Xiu a big favor, but Nani Xiu still looked apologetic. What was going on? Li Tianlan looked up at the strange and cold super expert in front of him. This man really didn't look like a good person. You don't want to eat it? The man in white raised his eyebrows slightly and smiled playfully. I just can't figure out why. Li Tianlan shook his head. Without hesitation, he poured the potion in the bottle directly into his mouth. The potion was a little bitter, but the moment it entered the abdomen, it was extremely hot, and it seemed that his physical strength began to recover little by little. It's very simple. Do you really think you're a nobody? You're famous in the dark world. I can't afford to offend that crazy woman, Samsara. Even Our Highness doesn't want to offend her. If she knows that I robbed your military exploits and left you alone when you're injured, maybe that crazy woman will fight with Our Highness. Damn it, we can't afford to offend her, can't we? I'll stay here for 10 minutes. When you recover a little, I'll leave. We don't owe each other anything. I've done my best. The man shrugged his shoulders coolly. This was a standard westernized gesture, but his Chinese was extremely fluent. Samsara, can't afford to offend, crazy woman. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes and looked at the man in white in front of him. I wonder which force you belong to, Your Excellency. The man in white's face froze slightly. He took a deep look at Li Tianlan and said indifferently, You'll know after a while. Li Tianlan nodded, narrowed his eyes, and said softly, Then we, or you and Samsara Palace, are we enemies or friends? The man in white was stunned. He seemed to think about it seriously and frowned slightly. Who can say for sure? Anyway, there's no conflict at the moment. The man in white looked at the position behind Li Tianlan and suddenly said, The man who wanted to kill you just now is codenamed Heavenly Calamity, a super killer ranked 5th on the killer list. His strength is not great, but he's really good with guns. His 2 famous guns, Whisper and Grim Smile, are powerful enough to kill all the experts in the Thundershocking realm. Boy, with the strength you just showed, it's still possible to kill Heavenly Calamity in close combat, but if you keep a distance. He shook his head and cursed in a low voice, Damn it, I gave him the barrel of Grim Smile. Li Tianlan's heart skipped a beat, but he didn't show it. The man in white waited for a few more minutes. Seeing that Li Tianlan's face had recovered a little color, he said directly, I'll go after him and talk about the old days. As for this, I'll take it with me. He raised the head in his hand. His figure faded in front of Li Tianlan and then disappeared. Bang! 2 bullets fell next to Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan picked them up and looked at them. One of them was the bullet he had just shot with the sky attack, and the other should be the bullet that almost killed him just now. However, the bullets that could kill most experts at the peak of the Thundershocking realm were all caught by the man in white, and they had been squeezed out of shape by him. The corner of Li Tianlan's mouth twitched. He put away the bullets and said nothing. You can call me Daybreak. In the darkness, the voice of the man in white came faintly from a distance. Don't speak ill of me in front of that crazy woman. Daybreak? This was a code name he had never heard of. But thinking that he might not be weaker than Tribulation in strength, and that he would not be a nobody in the dark world, he had never heard of this kind of super expert who was a half step to the invincible realm or even a little step closer. It could only be said that he was ignorant. Li Tianlan laughed at himself. Before his smile faded, his eyes had narrowed slightly. In the distance, a figure passed through the forest at a very fast speed and rushed directly in Li Tianlan's direction. Jiang Shangyu. A trace of indifference flashed in Li Tianlan's eyes, and his expression was calm. What? Are you in trouble? Jiang Shangyu quickly rushed to Li Tianlan and observed his expression. I just heard a gunshot. Was it aimed at you? Are you all right? I'm fine. It's just a minor injury. Li Tianlan said flatly. A minor injury? Jiang Shangyu's eyes narrowed subconsciously. Li Tianlan, who had recovered some of his combat power, was still very weak, but there was nothing strange on his face. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, pointed to the ruins not far away, and said calmly, Nani Shou is dead. Jiang Shangyu's eyes, which had been flickering, suddenly froze, and his body shook violently. Nani Shou? Dead? You killed him? In an instant, there was only a storm in Jiang Shangyu's heart. Li Tianlan could actually kill an expert who was infinitely close to the half-step invincible realm? How could this be possible? Jiang Shangyu's heart was suddenly in a mess. Unable to care about anything else, he subconsciously turned to look at Nani Shou's body. His eyes were forbearing, with unconcealable bitterness and unwillingness. He's dead. Behind him, Li Tianlan's calm voice sounded, with an indescribable indifference. I think you should go down and see him. Jiang Shangyu's chaotic heart suddenly became extremely clear. His body tightened, and he suddenly turned around at the fastest speed in his life, about to attack with all his strength. In his sight, the silver sky attack in Li Tianlan's hand had been stretched out. The deep muzzle was directly against Jiang Shangyu's chest. Jiang Shangyu's heart suddenly sank, and he was just about to say something. Li Tianlan already smiled, held the gun with both hands, and pulled the trigger without any hesitation. Martyr, take care. Bang! In the gunshot that shook the whole mountain forest, a large vortex appeared in front of Li Tianlan. It was just a shot, but Jiang Shangyu's body seemed to be hit by a missile, and his whole body was directly blown out nearly 100 meters away. Chapter 172. None of my enemies survived. Li Tianlan appreciated this famous saying of Dongqing Wudi, the god of massacre in Zhongzhou state. This was Marshal Dongqing Wudi's declaration to the whole dark world, but for Li Tianlan, it was also the most basic principle in his life. The dark world was the most naked and simple world. Right and wrong, good and evil, right and wrong, were all mixed into the purest blood and black. There was no right or wrong here, only doing or not doing. Enemies deserved to die. This was the simplest truth. Only by killing the enemy could one live. Even an idiot could understand it. Li Tianlan didn't want to judge whether Jiang Shangyu was a good person or a bad person. Simple judgment was actually the most childish behavior in the dark world. Fighting, killing, involving, cooperation, compromise, everything was for the interests and desires that constantly fluctuated in the general trend. How could it be good or bad? Jiang Shangyu had helped Li Tianlan. It had to be admitted that in nearly a week, Jiang Shangyu's professional lurking skills had also reduced a lot of trouble for Li Tianlan. The cooperative hunting between the two could also be said to be a pleasant experience. Even if they got along seriously, Jiang Shangyu could even be regarded as a good person. But he was an enemy. Enemy. That word was enough. From the standpoint of his own survival, if Jiang Shangyu wanted to kill him, then he had to die. He didn't care about the means, the past, or the grudges, as long as he died. This was the dark world. Brutal, pure, and dark. The moment the muzzle of the sky attack was pressed against Jiang Shanyu's chest, there was only calmness in Li Tianlan's eyes. He pulled the trigger. The moment the bullet was fired, the vortex formed in the air swirled wildly. He saw a large amount of blood mist burst out of Jiang Shanyu's body, and his body was blasted into the forest 100 meters away. Li Tianlan just pursed his lips, and his face was pale and indifferent. The vortex ahead surged. A very dazzling silver light flashed in front of Li Tianlan, and then went straight down. It was like a drop of strange liquid. In that instant, it emitted a bright light and then became incomparably dim. However, this drop of liquid fell from above and was not torn apart by the air vortex in front of it. Instead, it directly passed through the extremely distorted air flow and fell straight to the ground. Li Tianlan, who had once again exhausted all his strength, subconsciously reached out and caught the drop of silver liquid in his hand. His tense joints relaxed completely this time, making a crackling sound. He gasped and sat directly on the ground. The air vortex caused by sky strike gradually slowed down. Li Tianlan took a deep breath and looked at the drop of liquid in his hand, frowning slightly. To be precise, it was not a water droplet, but a semi-solidified liquid. It had a terrifyingly high temperature, and when it landed on his hand, it was like magma. The liquid slid slightly in Li Tianlan's hand. Although it was liquid, its structure was not loose at all, which showed its great density. To put it bluntly, this little drop was like a special alloy after melting, or some other substance. Alloy? Li Tianlan's face changed, and he suddenly looked up at the forest ahead. His body instinctively stood up and made a sprinting movement. But just after 2 steps, he swayed and fell to the ground again. In the forest about 100 meters ahead, the night rain mixed with grass and leaves shot into the air at the same time. Large swaths of turf and soil rose up, blocking the view. Vaguely, a figure quickly jumped up in the grass and leaves, rushing into the depths of the forest without looking back. A cold voice with a hint of laughter spread through the forest. It seemed a little weak, but it was cold enough to make people tremble. "Senior Brotherly, we'll meet again. Jiang Shanyu." Li Tianlan tightly grasped the drop of silver liquid in his hand. His expression was calm, but his deep eyes became more and more indifferent. He took a deep breath and felt his current state. He clenched his fists, but he did not chase after him. He was very clear about the power of Sky Strike. This horrible killing weapon developed by the Dongqing clan was enough to threaten most experts of the Thunder-Shocking realm or even the peak of the Thunder-Shocking realm at close range. This so-called close distance was roughly around 1,500 meters. Just now, the Sky Strike had been completely pressed against Jiang Shanyu's chest. This was a zero-distance shot. But under such circumstances, Jiang Shanyu did not die. How could he not die? Li Tianlan lowered his head slightly and looked at the silver liquid in his hand. In less than a minute, the semi-solid liquid gradually solidified again. In his sight, the liquid, which was like a water droplet, vibrated slightly and finally became a solid metal ball the size of a soybean. Raindrops kept falling on Li Tianlan's hand. At this moment, he did not know whether it was an illusion or something else, but he always felt that the dim metal ball in his hand seemed to be slightly brighter. What the hell is this? Li Tianlan frowned. There was no doubt that this belonged to Jiang Shanyu. There seemed to be a piece of alloy hidden in his chest. When the sky attack was pressed against Jiang Shanyu's chest, Li Tianlan noticed it, but he didn't pay much attention to it. With the power of the sky attack, there was basically no alloy that could not be destroyed. But it was obvious that the power of Sky Strike was almost completely offset by that piece of alloy. Most of Jiang Shanyu's injuries came from the fierce impact of Sky Strike. And this drop of silver liquid should be a drop that was separated from the piece of alloy in Jiang Shanyu's chest. Of course, it was just a drop that was not completely destroyed. Li Tianlan squeezed the small metal ball in his hand, and his face became a little gloomy. Boom! 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 A series of explosions suddenly rang out in the distance. The roar came from afar, as if there were artillery firing aimlessly. The whole forest was trembling slightly, and the leaves that had lost all their moisture after the battle fluttered and fell. Li Tianlan was stunned and looked back subconsciously. In the distance, at the spot where hundreds of East Island elites were ambushing, an unexpected fierce battle seemed to have broken out. The sound of artillery roared, and the fire soared into the sky. Even though he was very far away, Li Tianlan could vaguely feel the smoke and hot air waves rising in the distance. Li Tianlan suddenly remembered what the man named Daybreak had just said. I was going to kill all the elites of East Island here. Isn't it exciting to think of slaughtering people? But there are already 3 guys who are not weak fighting over there. I came here in advance and happened to see this wonderful battle. Your sword move is good, and that shot is not weak either. But you can't kill Nani Xiao, so I can't be regarded as taking your military exploits. Well, besides, I saved your life. 3 guys who were not weak. Not weak. This didn't sound like a compliment, but such an evaluation came from the mouth of Daybreak, a superior a half step to the invincible realm. They were at least 3 superiors at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm. With the death of Nani Xiao, this defense spot was obviously going to be wiped out under the surprise attack of 3 superiors at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm. Li Tianlan struggled to stand up, took the sky attack, hesitated, and finally decided to leave. He wasn't sure who was attacking the East Island elites at this defense spot, but in his current state, he wasn't even qualified to go up and watch. It was the best choice to leave here first. But this time, he was alone again. That kind of quiet lurking life seemed to be over. Without Jianghu, how he, who was seriously injured, could hunt the enemies at other defense spots alone was also a problem that needed careful consideration. Li Tianlan took a deep breath, turned around, and moved forward. Wait a minute. A footstep suddenly sounded from the forest. At first, it was in English, but he soon realized something and repeated it in somewhat stiff Chinese. Li Tianlan turned around abruptly and subconsciously held the sky attack, which actually had no bullets, in his hand. 100 meters away, a sharp blue electric arc spread rapidly in the forest. A figure moved forward as if stepping on the electric light, as fast as the wind and lightning. Any trees in front of him were smashed into powder in the spread of the electric arc. Almost in the blink of an eye, the figure had appeared in front of Li Tianlan in the electric light. Li Tianlan simply gave up the idea of leaving. There was a big difference between superiors at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm. The so-called peak was actually just a realm. After breaking through the stabilization phase of the thunder-shocking realm, it was the peak phase. But there was also a huge difference in combat effectiveness between those who had just entered the peak phase and those who were about to break through. Judging from the momentum, the strength of the person in front of him would at least not be lower than that of Nani Xiao. Even if he was not a half step to the invincible realm, he was not far from it. Such a person, in Li Tianlan's current state, could not run away. He stood quietly where he was, calmly looking at the figure that appeared in front of him in an instant. This was an extremely handsome Western white man, about 30 years old. He was tall and burly, handsome, and had blonde hair. He wore a white suit, which had been stained with a lot of blood. His smile was gentle, but his body still carried the fierce killing intent that had not dissipated. He looked elegant and dangerous. He looked at Li Tianlan's face seriously. After the battle, Li Tianlan's face was dirty, but it did not completely cover his appearance. The white man breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile, "Is it Li Tianlan? Young Master Li? Young Master Li?" Li Tianlan had heard of this name, but he rarely heard it. He narrowed his eyes slightly, but his hand did not loosen his grip on the gun. "Let me introduce myself. I'm Duke. Madame Qin Weibai's most loyal servant." Duke looked at Li Tianlan with a smile on his face and sighed with emotion. "I finally found you. My God, you don't know how we got through these days. If you had an accident in East Island, the boss would have been furious. I'm afraid that none of us servants would have survived." "Duke, Among the 12 super masters of samsara, Duke ranked second only to Saint, military counselor, and general. Li Tianlan's eyes moved. He had never seen this super master of samsara before, so he did not dare to be careless. He just said calmly, "Why should I believe your identity? Isn't my loyalty enough?" Duke looked at Li Tianlan in surprise and said in a serious tone. The corner of Li Tianlan's mouth twitched. At this moment, he could almost clearly hear the sound of something falling to the ground. That was the moral integrity of a supermaster. It fell to the ground and broke into pieces. Tianlan, he is indeed Duke. After you lost contact, we acted together. 10 hours ago, we got in touch with Bai Yuming again and knew what you were going to do tonight. So, we came here as soon as possible. Are you okay? A faint tired voice sounded, steady and dignified. A tall and plump blonde woman walked out of the darkness and appeared in front of Li Tianlan. Horsewoman. Li Tianlan finally breathed a sigh of relief, put down the sky attack in his hand, and shook his head. I'm okay. It's not a big problem. Horsewoman nodded and smiled. When she was about to say something, Duke suddenly said, "Young Master Li, here." He pointed at the empty and desolate battlefield nearby and said with a solemn expression, "Is this the place where you fought?" "Yes, I met Nani Xiao and Heavenly Calamity." Li Tianlan nodded. Heavenly Calamity? Duke's and Horsewoman's faces changed at the same time, and they subconsciously raised their voices. Li Tianlan's eyes narrowed slightly, and he suddenly had a better understanding of Heavenly Calamity, who was known as the Spear King. He mentioned Nani Xiao and Heavenly Calamity at the same time, but it was clear that Duke and Horsewoman's attention had been attracted by Heavenly Calamity. It's Heavenly Calamity. Li Tianlan nodded. But he ran away, and Nani Xiao died. As he spoke, he suddenly thought of something. He narrowed his eyes and asked, "By the way, do you know the code name Daybreak?" Daybreak? Duke was stunned and subconsciously looked at Horsewoman. Then he nodded. I've only heard of this person recently. He seems to be a loyal confidant of a highness. I'm afraid he's no weaker than Saint. His strength seems to have surpassed the half-step invincible realm, and he's only one step away from the real invincible realm. This is a very mysterious force. Horsewoman said, Samsara seems to be planning to cooperate with them recently. Saint is in charge of this matter. Mysterious, in Li Tianlan's impression, Samsara Palace seemed to be the most mysterious force in the dark world. And the force behind Daybreak, was it the kind of force that was so mysterious that it didn't even have a name? Saint. Well, Saint, Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes. He knew that Saint, the first super master of Samsara, was in East Island. If there was no accident, Saint should be with Shitian Mingzi and Dubian Xiangyuan now, and he had already got in touch with Shitian Financial Group. Then Shitian Financial Group, Li Tianlan asked subconsciously. It's a bargaining chip. Duke said everything he knew. Perhaps only the core supermasters like them knew what the identity of Qin Weibai's man meant. Shitian Financial Group is the bargaining chip for the transaction between Samsara and the force behind Daybreak. Li Tianlan whistled subconsciously and said with a smile, a large financial group as a bargaining chip. What a big deal. The sound of gunfire still sounded in the distance, but it was getting weaker and weaker. Li Tianlan glanced in that direction and raised his eyebrows slightly. Who's there? It's Flaming Fire. The three of us acted together. Looking at Paladin who wanted to say something, Paladin glared at him without batting an eyelid. Li Tianlan nodded and said, let's go and have a look. Horsewoman suddenly looked around and said in a strange tone, Tianlan, I heard that Jiang Shangyu is with you. Where is he? He escaped. Li Tianlan was silent for 2 seconds and sighed. I shot him. I thought I could kill him, but there was an accident. He reached out and handed the bean-sized metal ball in his hand to Horsewoman. Do you know what this is? Horsewoman subconsciously took it. Looking at the metal that had completely solidified into a round ball, she frowned slightly. Duke suddenly made a sound of surprise. He took the metal ball and looked at it carefully. Li Tianlan looked at Duke calmly. But Duke's face gradually became dignified. He quickly glanced at Li Tianlan, then lowered his head and stretched out a finger. A faint but bright electric arc appeared in his hand. The arc became brighter and brighter, gradually turning into a dazzling blue. Duke stretched out his finger and slowly pressed the arc on the metal ball in his palm. The metal ball surged slightly and seemed to be a little loose under the impact of the arc. But then it returned to its original state again, but the light was a little dimmer. Duke's pupils shrank slightly. He glanced at Li Tianlan with a complicated look in his eyes. This is a kind of metal. The Duke hesitated for a moment and said something insincerely. Make it clear. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes and said calmly. There was no curiosity or command in his voice, but there was an irresistible force in it. Duke smiled bitterly and looked at Li Tianlan. He hesitated and said, I'm not sure what it is. I'm just guessing that it should be a metal that has lost part of its activity. But if there is no accident, the activity of this metal will slowly recover after a while. He looked at Li Tianlan cautiously. Li Tianlan remained calm. Horsewoman's face changed. A metal that could withstand the attack of a top expert of the thunder-shocking realm without losing part of its activity, and its activity could slowly recover. There seemed to be only one kind of metal like this in the whole dark world. Go on. Li Tianlan looked at the silver in Duke's hand without changing his expression. Duke looked at Horsewoman and braced himself to say, Young Master Li, do you know the 12 murderous weapons in the dark world? Li Tianlan looked at Duke strangely and nodded without saying anything. Actually, Duke took a deep breath and said softly, 20 years ago, there were 13 murderous weapons in the dark world, but later one was broken. Among the 13 murderous weapons, only 2 have silver bodies. One belongs to the Jianghu family of South America and is called the Legend of Qin. And the other is called the Infinite Sky. It used to belong to Zhuanyuantai of Kunlun, to the Li family. Li Tianlan's face suddenly changed. Duke looked at the metal ball in his hand and continued, if I'm not mistaken, this little thing should be one of the fragments of the Infinite Sky. Speaking of updates, the recent updates are really F***ed up. Just now in the reader group, a brother said that he didn't want to see the updates, but wanted to see the reason why he stopped updating. But in fact, I can't even find a reason to stop updating. I'm just not in a good state. I have ideas and know how to write, but I just feel unsatisfied when I write. In fact, I feel that I can update twice or even 3 times every day. I think so when I stop updating, but when I write, it's F***ing, a pain in the ass. Chapter 173. The rain fell between heaven and earth in the night and slowed down. The rainy days in Changdao that had lasted for many days seemed to be about to pass. The wind gradually became gentle and blew melodiously into the distance. As far as the eye could see, the fire gradually went out, and the sound of gunfire slowly disappeared. The quiet mountain forest was covered with the veil of night, extraordinarily quiet and serene. Li Tianlan stood quietly on the uneven ground after the fierce battle. He lowered his head and looked at the silver metal ball in his hand. The murderous weapon that once belonged to the Li family. The murderous weapon that was broken in the last battle of his father. In that battle, it was not only the infinite sky that had been shattered. The glory and splendor of the Li family for hundreds of years seemed to have been shattered along with this murderous weapon, turned into dust, particles, and turned into nothingness. Li Tianlan never knew that his family also had a murderous weapon that could dominate the dark world. But in some vague memories, it seemed that when he was very young, when the people in the camp at the border were still prosperous, his grandfather seemed to have sent many people to the border to look for something. Was this it? Looking at the bean-sized metal ball in his hand, Li Tianlan's eyes turned as deep as the deepest night sky. You can understand it as for a woman. My most beloved woman. Do you know what Kunlun City is? Do you know what Phoenix Pavilion is? Why does it have nothing to do with a mortal enemy? Senior Brother Li, do you know how your father died back then? Among the 13 murderous weapons, only 2 have silver bodies. One belongs to the Jianghu family of South America and is called the Legend of Qin. And the other is called the Infinite Sky. It used to belong to Zhuanyuantai of Kunlun, to the Li family. In the quiet mountain forest, some seemingly important or unimportant conversations immediately came into Li Tianlan's mind. Kunlun City, Phoenix Pavilion, the Li family, the Infinite Sky. Some things seemed to be vaguely related to each other, but some crucial things were missing from each other. No matter how he thought about it, something was wrong. What did Jiang Shanyu know? And how did the fragment of the Infinite Sky fall into Jiang Shanyu's hands? Li Tianlan was silent, carefully recalling the scene when the muzzle of the sky attack was pressed against Jiang Shanyu's chest. He felt that the fragment was at least the size of a palm. If they were all fragments of the Infinite Sky, how could Jiang Shanyu get so many? Jiang Shanyu. Jiang Shanyu. Li Tianlan clenched the silver metal ball in his hand and kept repeating the name. The bright light kept flashing in his pupils, which added a bit of enchanting charm to him. Young Master Li, should I go after them? He shouldn't have gone far. Duke looked at Li Tianlan and asked cautiously. Duke, who met Li Tianlan for the first time, didn't like or dislike him, but he knew very well what it meant when his boss asked him to come to East Island. The 12 super masters of Samsara were the real core figures of Samsara Palace, but when the will of the master of Samsara Palace was silent, Qin Weibai's will was the highest instruction of the whole Samsara Palace. Duke naturally knew how to treat Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan's heart skipped a beat. After thinking about it, he shook his head and smiled. Forget it. He glanced at Duke and said calmly, from now on, just call me by my name like horsewoman. I'll call you Duke. Duke nodded, but there seemed to be some confusion in his eyes. He didn't know why Li Tianlan didn't let him catch up. The intelligence system of Samsara Palace had always been a mystery to the outside world. What people had seen had always been the kind of almost all-pervasive and yet meticulous intelligence system that never existed. Of course, Samsara Palace knew Zhongzhou State very well. In terms of the younger generation, although Jiang Shangyu ranked second among the top 10 young experts, behind Wang Shengxiao and Gu Hanzhan, Samsara Palace had a very high evaluation of Jiang Shangyu, even the highest. He was no weaker than Wang Shengxiao and Gu Hanzhan at all. How far could such a person escape when he was seriously injured? If he caught up with him now, Duke had at least 50% confidence to kill Jiang Shangyu. This was equivalent to getting rid of a future enemy for Li Tianlan. Why not catch up with such a good opportunity? Your identities. Li Tianlan looked at Duke and shook his head. Not appropriate. Duke was stunned. He took a deep look at Li Tianlan and said nothing. Li Tianlan also wanted to kill Jiang Shangyu. Duke was an expert who was infinitely close to the half-step invincible realm. If he did it himself, the chance of success was quite high. But there was no impenetrable wall in the world. Although Samsara Palace had been cooperating with Zhongzhou State in recent years, partners and their own people were two different concepts. If Jiang Shangyu died in his hands, it could be regarded as dying in the battle for the chosen one in Zhongzhou State. But if he died in the hands of Duke, the super master of Samsara, then things would become sensitive. Today, the Jiang family occupied more than just a seat in the decision-making committee. Jiang Shanyu's father, Jiang Shan, could easily set off a big storm, no matter his position in the Prince Group or his relationship with the Special Warfare Group. If Jiang Shanyu died in the hands of Samsara Palace, the best result was that Samsara Palace would be in constant trouble. If it was more serious, the entire Samsara Palace would completely withdraw from Zhongzhou State, and it was even possible that it would be listed as a hostile force. There's nothing inappropriate about it. A cold and sweet voice came from the dark mountain forest. Although there are risks, there are some things that can't be guaranteed. It's definitely worth taking some risks to keep Jiang Shangyu here. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows slightly and turned his head. The night rain had completely stopped. Flaming Fire's figure walked out of the wet and hazy night. She looked a little tired, but her eyes were amazingly bright. In the future, Jiang Shangyu is likely to be one of your most powerful enemies. It's a pity not to kill such a person. Duke looked at flaming fire and then at Li Tianlan, ready to make a move. Li Tianlan habitually narrowed his eyes. After a moment of silence, he shook his head. Forget it. He was silent for a while and finally shook his head. It had been about 10 minutes since Jiang Shangyu escaped. Li Tianlan was not sure whether the communication device on Jiang Shangyu was damaged or not. If it was not damaged, then at least Jiang Shangyu had informed his father Jiang Shan as soon as possible. If he went after him now, whether he succeeded or failed, it would be troublesome. Li Tianlan was not worried that Jiang Shangyu would spread the news that he had shot him. First of all, Jiang Shangyu wanted to kill him first. Second, whether it was the fragment of the infinite sky, the so-called Phoenix Pavilion, or Jiang Shangyu's heavenly king heart, they were all involved in the game of life and death between the two. At most, Jiang Shangyu would tell Jiang Shan. As long as he did not die, then at least the two sides could exchange for a superficial peace. Even if it was temporary, it was much better than the trouble he would face after killing Jiang Shangyu. Time. The most important thing was time. Li Tianlan now needed at least 2 or 3 years to recover to his peak state. The inadaptability of forcibly upgrading to the fire-flaming realm with medicine and the temporary effect of the medicine made Li Tianlan crave to become stronger. If he had 3 or 5 years, he did not even need to reach the invincible realm. As long as he entered the thunder-shocking realm, he would not have so many considerations and scruples, and he would not have to compromise in the face of the general trend. Let's go. Li Tianlan carefully put away the fragment of the infinite sky, which represented the glory of the Li family, and turned to walk forward. Young Master Li, no, Tianlan, I think what Jingxiang said is right. I'm willing to give it a try. It's a good thing to help you kill an enemy directly, isn't it? Duke walked beside Li Tianlan, a step behind him, and said with a chuckle. It had to be said that when this handsome super master of samsara smiled, he gave people a very warm feeling. He had blonde hair and obvious smile lines. When he smiled, his whole handsome face seemed to show a kind of sincere joy, and it was so bright that it seemed to be able to dispel the darkness around him. Li Tianlan turned to look at him and suddenly asked, "Do you know who my biggest enemy is?" Duke's smile froze slightly, and then he instinctively pondered. It should be Wang Xingxiao. Well, he does deserve the title of young heavenly son. He has such strength at such a young age. There is no second one in the dark world like him. With this kind of talent, he deserves the title of heavenly son. Li Tianlan smiled. In the past 200 years, the fastest expert to reach the thunder-shocking realm in Zhongzhou State and even in the dark world was 23 years old. This record came from Zhuanyuantai of Kunlun. It could be said that it was one of Li Tianlan's ancestors. Wang Xingxiao had never celebrated his 24th birthday. Compared with the legendary record, he was only a few months slower. Li Tianlan never denied this terrifying talent. After Wang Xingxiao, in the words of Zhongzhou State, it is probably Gu Hanshan and Jiang Shangyu. They may all become your biggest enemies. But although these people are also very strong, they are not as good as Wang Xingxiao. I'm not talking about strength and talent. It should be the foundation. It seems that people who come from the Wang family of Beihai will be looked up to on any occasion. Duke shook his head and sighed softly. There was some melancholy in his eyes for no reason. Li Tianlan didn't stop smiling. He shook his head and said in a flat tone, "No." "No?" Duke looked at Li Tianlan with a puzzled face. "My biggest enemy is time. And only time." Li Tianlan said blandly, "If it's about people, I have no enemies." He looked at the night ahead with a calm and resolute expression. His gentle tone revealed a kind of confidence that could make anyone awe. Not even one. The corner of Duke's mouth twitched. After a long silence, he shrugged and spread his hands, saying with a smile, "Well, I shouldn't have believed it. But I don't know why, after hearing it from you, I believe it. Jingxiang, horsewoman, do you believe it? A strong killing intent rose behind him out of nowhere. Li Tianlan looked back in shock. Flaming Fire, who was quietly following him, squinted and stared at Duke, who had a playful smile on his face. Horsewoman looked helpless. Li Tianlan, who didn't know the situation, looked at Flaming Fire and asked subconsciously, "Your name is Jingxiang?" I heard from Little Bai that you are from East Island. You. He looked at Duke and felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't tell what was wrong. The 12 super masters of Samsara were all code names. Duke could call Flaming Fire's real name intimately. They should have a good relationship, but, Kyoka Kitano. Tianlan, don't you know her? Duke blinked. His smile was still bright and handsome, but there was a trace of wretchedness in it. Looking at Li Tianlan's blank expression, Duke shook his head in disbelief and sighed. My God, you really need to make up for it. There is someone who doesn't know Kyoka Kitano. She is my goddess, the most famous star in East Island today. Tianlan, I will show you Kitano's works later. Her latest work seems to be. Crazy girl, wife investigator. You should see it, really. In Flaming Fire's eyes, which were about to explode, Duke continued to talk excitedly. Flaming Fire's face is 70% similar to Kyoka Kitano's, but her temperament is colder. Well, I have observed her but. It's so beautiful. I face Flaming Fire every night. No, it's Kitano. Tianlan, do you want to touch it? Flaming Fire doesn't dare to refuse. Damn woman, do you want to fight me? The lightning, like extremely condensed thunderbolts, suddenly fell from the sky. Li Tianlan, who was standing next to Duke, was unscathed, but there was a big black hole where Duke had been standing. In the flashing lightning, Duke and Flaming Fire disappeared almost at the same time. The blue arc of light spread fiercely, and the forest dozens of meters away exploded into the sky in an instant. It's starting again. Horsewoman groaned helplessly. She looked at Li Tianlan and said with a wry smile, "Personal advice, Tianlan. You should stay away from that wretched bastard Duke. He seems to be interested in Flaming Fire, and me, our butts. This kind of thing has happened more than once." Duke's words came to Li Tianlan's mind for no reason. Tianlan, do you want to touch it? Flaming Fire doesn't dare to refuse, and horsewoman, Li Tianlan's eyes wandered. It was completely instinctive. Horsewoman's dignified and charming face suddenly blushed. She took a small step back subconsciously and stared at him with her beautiful eyes. What are you looking at? Li Tianlan coughed and looked away awkwardly, but 4 words were still echoing in his mind. Don't dare to refuse. This "don't dare" was really exquisite. Let's go. He took a deep breath, stepped forward, and asked casually, "What's your next plan?" "Let's gather people in Changdao first. Whether it's me, Duke, or Flaming Fire, we all have tasks in Changdao. But our main task is to keep you safe. So when we heard that you were missing, we all put down what we were doing. Now our team should break through to Changdao, and some of them have already entered Changdao. The most important thing now is to gather people." Horsewoman shrugged and said in a lazy tone. "It's not easy." Li Tianlan frowned and said subconsciously. He was sure that some elites had already entered Changdao, but now many people on both sides had completely lost contact. Even Li Beidian and the others were missing. It might be quite difficult to gather these people, but it was something they had to do. "It's okay." Horsewoman said softly, "We've recently established a new cooperation channel in East Island, and now it comes in handy." "A new cooperation channel?" Li Tianlan glanced at Horsewoman, who still looked calm, and a figure came to his mind instinctively. Daybreak. Daybreak, who just appeared and saved his life. Samsara Palace seemed to be ready to cooperate with the force behind Daybreak by using Shitian Financial Group, which intended to seek refuge, as a bargaining chip. Intuitively, Li Tianlan felt that this new cooperation channel had something to do with the force behind daybreak. A mysterious force whose name he didn't even know? Could it be a big force hidden in East Island? Samsara was cooperating with the hidden dark force in East Island. Did the officials of East Island know about it? East Island and Jianghu State and Samsara and East Island. The success or failure of Jianghu State's plan probably depended on the result of the Battle of Changdao. A series of things should have gradually come to the surface, but a cloud of fog suddenly appeared in front of Li Tianlan's eyes. It covered the general trend, and it was chaotic. In fact, I was inclined to kill Jianghu just now. Horsewoman suddenly said, but it's a little too late to say this now. We can only wait for the next chance. This time, Jianghu is seriously injured and may leave East Island. It seems that only Wang Xingxiao and Gu Hanzhan are left as candidates for that position. Which position? Li Tianlan looked back at Horsewoman. You don't know? The look in Horsewoman's eyes was strange. Li Tianlan frowned and shook his head. He didn't understand why Wang Xingxiao and Gu Hanzhan, the heirs of the two super forces, would participate in this Jianghu State plan. It was reasonable for them to compete with each other for the country, but he felt it was a little abrupt. After all, even if they were competing, they wouldn't participate in such a big scene where they could die at any time. It was best to let them continue to grow. But now, with the so-called position that Horsewoman said, everything seemed to have a reasonable explanation. To be exact, it's a quarter of the leadership of a troop. This was originally a competition between Wang Xingxiao and Gu Hanzhan, and the higher-ups also acquiesced. But Wang Xingxiao also had this idea, but now, Horsewoman shook her head and said, it's his bad luck to meet you. Which troop? Li Tianlan touched his nose, feeling a little baffled. The National Treasure. Horsewoman looked at Li Tianlan and said faintly, the super troop of Jianghu State, similar to the Kusanagi force, but more advanced. You're tuning into the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.